Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the 275th edition of the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse podcast. I am your host, Steve Wellings, and joining me this evening we have Andy Patterson, Dave the Hater Lowback, and Gabe Lewis. Not sure who else is coming on. I think Ozzy's at cricket practice or something, so we'll endeavour to get him on. If you want to join us, then hit me up on the DMs or Twitter or whatever, and I'll send you the link. Same as you guys in the chat as well. Well, we're going to be talking a bit of Adonis-Stevenson later on in the ADONIS-JACK fight, which obviously ended in a majority draw. There's going to be a bit of Gary Russell Jr. against Joseph Diaz, maybe a bit of Tyson Fury opponent chat. I know everybody's desperate for that. And not a hell of a lot going on next week, to be honest with you. There are Bellew of the Weeks, though. We'll use those to clean out the end of the show. 2 dislikes already, says Dave the Hater Lowback. They're loving us. They're hating us as usual. Well, you know what? We'll be here for about the next hour and a half, 2 hours or whatever. So if you don't like it, turn us off. There's only one place to start this week, everybody, and that is the Elland Road Football Ground. Packed, hostile atmosphere, to say the least. Lee Selby losing his IBF title by a surprising split decision, I would say, against Josh Warrington. 115-113, Alan Davis had it to Lee Selby. 116-112, Phil Edwards. And 115-113, Frank Lombardi overruled him. Selby was cut over the left eye in the second round, a head clash, and then another bad cut in the right eye in the 6th. He stuck in there, though, to be fair to him, the old Welsh Mayweather. I fancied Warrington to do well in this one for weeks, as you know, and I got widely derided for it, mainly because I thought that Warrington wasn't as bad as people were making out, and I thought that Selby wasn't necessarily as good as people were making out, therefore narrowing the gap between the two of them. Throwing home advantage, a solid game plan, and a renowned engine that we all know that Josh Warrington has, and he was crowned the champion in front of his hometown fans. But hats off to Selby as well. I mean, he fought well in defeat, cuts and all, and he fought a man who brought the best out of him, but ultimately it just wasn't enough. Selby now, I suppose, he just fades into obscurity, remaining a member of the Who Needs Him club, but without the comfort of a title. And as for Warrington, I'm thinking that he'll just continue to defend in Leeds, defend the title, maybe fight Frampton in Belfast, but I don't know. I think those two might be kept apart, to be honest with you. Andy, stylistically speaking, it was interesting to see Lee Selby leading off and Warrington sitting back, looking for opportunities to counterpunch rather than just coming straight into range. And Warrington's left hook was very good. His patience was very good. And his head movement was very good. Where was the fight won and lost for you?
I just thought Warrington, well, I'll go back to last week, actually, if I can. I pretty much, I think I said I was going to shade with Warrington. I was, how I seen it go down was what I said last week, pretty much how it happened. I was surprised actually as to how well Warrington actually boxed against Selby. Good jab. It did look like he was going to wait until he drew Selby in and try and get him to throw, and then he would throw with him. He would step inside Selby's punches because obviously he's got the longer hands. You could see obviously he was outsized with Selby anyway, so he actually had to use the grit, determination, and box well at times, move when he had to, good head movement when he had to, but the left hook was his best punch all night long. Couldn't miss with it. Stunned Selby a couple of times. I think it might be around about round 7 or round 8 actually. I think I maybe clocked him, maybe kind of catching Selby. Good right hands as I says, but the main thing for last week, and I was quite happy to see Warrington do it actually, was the fact that he just he grew into the fight, he just grew in more confidence. Obviously, the gas tank was never in question. Was surprised that Selby really kind of not really been able to kind of like plant his flag in the fight. He wasn't really kind of any dominant at any time of the fight, I don't think. Maybe it's down at the weight, we don't know. He's basically confirmed he's going to go up in weight now. It's maybe a blessing in disguise, maybe this defeat, but he's lost the only thing that made him relevant, as I said last week. So it's going to be a long slog back for him. But I'm glad for Warrington. I'm pleased for Warrington actually, because it's good to see guys come through the traditional route, Commonwealth, British, European, and then on the world level. And let's see how they fare. He's done that. He's had the proper schooling. He's had the rounds. He's had the experience. He's had he's had the big time exposure now, so to speak. So you're talking about Frampton, for example. I don't think that fight happens next. Not at Windsor. I think he's got Warrington's actually got 2 cards to play here. Actually, he's actually made himself relevant. He's got the title, and B, he can draw over 20,000 in his home city. So he doesn't need to go anywhere. They need to come to him, or he can negotiate for them to come to him anyway. At least he's got the cards in his favour. I did think Warrington finished the fight strong. And I don't know where the referee, the judge got that scorecard for Selby. Actually, I thought Warrington was a worthy winner. I thought he won it by at least 3 points. But I wouldn't be surprised if people had it wider. Actually, I thought through that fight actually that Warrington just imposed his will, and in the end it just no outmanned them, but just outgritted them, and as I say, even at times outboxed them. So you can't fault Warrington there last night. It's maybe that moment where you define the moment or the moment defines you, and Warrington defined the moment. So fair play to him.
What about your nephew, Andy? Did he manage to make it through
He didn't go. No, he didn't go. He said he had to work apparently. So he'd actually messaged me last night saying, "Nah, I'm not going. I'm going. I've got to work and stuff." But he'd actually fancied Selby to win it. So I'll need to get in touch with him to see what he felt.
Yep, give him a shout, get him on if he wants to come with us. Ben Churchard, 93, regular listener, was watching the fight. He said, another quality night of boxing. Fair play to Warrington, just outworked Selby in every department. Thought Jack Stevenson was great as well, says Ben. Love watching Jack, he's never in a dull fight. Quite true, we will be coming to that one shortly. Gabe, just moving on past the fight itself, obviously we know that Warrington's the IBF champion. Just looking down the IBF top 15, to say it would be weak, I mean, that's an understatement. A lot of the names I've never even heard of. Beyond the champions at featherweight, there's not an awful lot going on, to be honest. The top 10, the top 5, very, very weak. No rated challenger put in for Warrington. They could have a field day here, Gabe, making defences and stuff. I see at number 3, a certain Kid Galahad is ranked. You could, I tell you what though, Andy, you could definitely see him being brought in for a defence. It would just make sense, wouldn't it?
It would make sense, mate, but it also I'd actually even flag up a few questions as to why a guy's coming back after a drug suspension. How many fights? And all of a sudden he's number 3 ranked with IBF for a world title. Aye, right.
These organisations don't let a failed drugs test get in the way of a good fight, though, so I could see Galahad from Sheffield thrown in against Leeds' Warrington. I don't know if you're a Galahad fan or not, Gabe. I know you are a fan of Warrington. Where do you see the respective combatants going from here? Do you think Warrington could fight Frampton? Gary Russell Jr. got a win last night. Could he get into the mix? Leo Santa Cruz, if he beats Mares. Where do Warrington and Selby fit into the future of the 126 division, Gabe?
I think that's a really good question. I think, in what I'm thinking is kind of what typically happens is that guy that people see as being the weakest champion in the division is the guy that people always go for. And it wouldn't surprise me at all to see, somebody from a little bit lower down on the IBF rankings maybe get a shot. I'm just going through there. The only guy that I've seen anywhere near recently is Genesis Cervania. I don't know. Maybe Keith Galahad gets a shot. I don't know. It may be one of those deals where they bring in somebody from another ranking from some other belt, just as like as an in between before mandatory. But I mean, I think the thing that you have to really look at is out of the 4 WBA, WBC, WBO, and IBF, I think you would honestly say that Warrington is probably the guy that, on paper looks the most ripe for picking. So I think that it's going to be one of those things where we may see him take a fight or two, maybe take his mandatory, which I guess would it be Kid Galahad?
There's nobody at number 2 at the moment, is there?
He's got have his box offs, kind of final eliminator kind of fights and stuff like that, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't believe so. So I mean, to me, it's kind of maybe he gets a little bit of time before his mandatory. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him give some guys a shot. The only thing that I could see changing maybe is I know that, in the Showtime stuff last night, they were talking to Gary Russell Jr. He's wanted unification for quite some time. So it wouldn't surprise me to see him try to get Josh over and or maybe come over. I don't think he would travel, though. I don't feel like Gary Russell would be much of a traveler. So I think that would be something that they would try to possibly pull off. As far as Selby, I can't say I'm really all that disappointed or sad about that at all. Just never been a really big fan of that guy, but not to say he's horrible or anything. I don't care for him too much. You know, I think maybe in a couple fights he'll be ready for another crack at it. But he always looks like he's so goddamn huge. So to me, I mean, anyway. So I think he maybe moves up. I don't know I don't keep up with the in between fights and all that stuff about the guys, how they're looking weight wise and all that stuff. So maybe you guys have a little bit more information on that one. But I don't know. There's a lot of ways to go for the guys. I think there's a lot of places they can take it, and I'll be interested to see how Warrington does. Like I said, I picked him last week, and so I'll be watching either way.
Yeah, I'm not so sure Warrington will be as easy of an out as some people think now, even being, maybe he is the weakest champion, but people won't be too quick to pick him off. Although saying that, you never know. Sometimes fighters get right up for an event and an occasion and they can never replicate that afterwards. Warrington could have peaked with this big outdoor event, but he could be getting better, and I actually think he's improving, and it won't be an easy fight for anybody in the division. I'm not saying he's the best featherweight out there by any stretch, but I think he's a decent fighter. One little triangle of fighters that was closed last night. In 2013, Warrington, who was never renowned as a puncher, managed to stop a certain Samir Munemne for the vacant Commonwealth featherweight title. And Munemne, back in 2009, was the only person to beat Lee Selby until last night. So Munemne beat Selby in Selby's 5th fight, I think it was. That was the one on his record. And Warrington stopped Munemne in 2013 for the Commonwealth title. So a little interesting little trinity there for you. Hey to Dave Loback, I know that you were watching the fight at the beginning of the show. I'm not sure how far you've got along, but Selby, he's for so long traded on his awkwardness, I think. We've all seen he's got flaws against the likes of Eric Hunter. The Montiel fight, Montiel, despite being past his best and way up in weights, was managed to give Selby a decent scrap. Selby's traded on that awkwardness, on that ability to negate and frustrate his opponents, and he's not really much of a puncher, but he did put it on the line late on, and Warrington's chin held up. I mean, what did you see there, Dave?
Well, from what I've seen, I don't know how the hell they got this a split decision, but I've seen the first 6 rounds, and I've given Warrington every one. Selby has a shout for the 3rd and 4th, but I still thought Warrington did it. I thought the 3rd was the closest. 4th was, I thought, still pretty clear for Warrington for me. He's in better punching position the entire time. He's leaning forward. He's coming forward. Selby's moving backwards for the most part. Sometimes he gets Warrington on the ropes, but every time Selby lands a good shot, Warrington answers, and usually it's usually in combination. So sometimes he'll answer with one, but sometimes he'll come back with like a right hand and then just follow up with like a hooks to the body, to the head, mixing it up, and that just negates everything Selby just did. Selby's work just being totally outworked and out hustled and out gritted by Warrington thus far in the fight from rounds 1 through 6. As far that's my opinion of the fight. I'm actually really stunned by this performance from Warrington. I thought that he was probably going to try more of a boxing game here, like try to. I mean, it's a form of boxing, I should say. I thought he was going to try more of a movement, less heavy on the work rate. But he's done it. He's doing a great job here, and obviously he got the win. Luckily, I'm impressed. Selby, not very impressed, although you can tell he's got heart. He's taking a lot of shots here, and they're moving him too. Neither guy I think we would call big punchers, but Warrington's kind of known as not being able to break an egg, and he's definitely seems able to move Selby around with his punches. I don't know if he's stunning him or not. The blood coming from, I think, both sides at this point is not helping matters either. I know they were from headbutts, but I mean, it just adds to the look of like Selby's taking a beating here. That's what it looks like to me. But it's still an entertaining fight. I mean, these rounds are somewhat competitive. I don't think they're that close, but Selby's in them, and at least he's throwing back, and then Warrington's answering. So it's actually fun to watch. I'm liking this, and I will complete the rest, the next 6 rounds following. I'm sure everybody's looking forward to my follow-up report on the complete scoring of the fight. As for the result of the fight, I mean, I think that Selby probably poses more stylistic difficulties to Frampton. He's come out since and announced he's moving up in weight now, so he's done there. We'll see what he can do. I've never thought Selby was too great either, Steve. I'm with you on that. I've never seen this Welsh Mayweather, this elite fighter that some other people have seen. So I've thought this was going to be a competitive fight. I did figure Selby would win, but he did not appear to have a very good game plan, or maybe the weight crashed him and he's just finally done at this weight class. But he didn't really move well. He didn't move his head at all, at least as far as I can see. Warrington's the one with the excellent head movement. He's slipping a lot of shots. Selby's just kind of there to be hit and teed off on, really. Maybe he's regressed, because when I saw Selby fight Gradovich, that was the first time I said, well, this guy's pretty good. I mean, that was a really good performance, probably the best performance of his career that I've seen. And since then, he hasn't been that active. He certainly hasn't fought any really relevant names or dangerous names. And he has not looked very good. That Montiel fight, he got hit way too easily. And that was a tiny little Montiel who was old, probably roided up. I think we decided that a few episodes back. Where Selby goes from here, it doesn't really matter. We'll have to see how he looks at the next weight class he chooses. But Warrington-Frampton is probably going to happen, right? They're with the same promoter. It's a big fight, although I think Frank said it's not going to happen next. Maybe it'll happen in a couple fights down the road.
Frank has trouble remembering their respective names. Who's the better fighter, Dave, out of Frampton and Warrington? Not necessarily against each other, but just individually speaking, who's better, Warrington or Frampton, in your opinion?
Well, going by resume, you have to say definitely Frampton, because he's got that Santa Cruz win, and he's got some other good wins as well. Donaire was shot, but it's still a decent win. It's a better name than Warrington or Selby have on their resumes. Warrington.
The reason I asked you this, Dave, is because you said something that I hear a lot of people saying. Selby is stylistically all wrong for Frampton, but he was supposed to be stylistically all wrong for Warrington, and the attributes, supposedly, that would deal with a Josh Warrington were unable to do so. So how would he be able to then implement those that same style, supposedly, against a Frampton if he wasn't able to do it last night?
Well, it doesn't matter now, because that fight's not going to happen. But I mean, I'm thinking of, I guess, the Selby that I saw fight Gradovich. I think that version of him gives Frampton some problems. The one we saw last night probably gets his ass kicked. I don't know. Doesn't really matter now.
We haven't seen that version since Gradovich, really, though, have we?
No, I don't think so. I haven't watched all of his fights since then, but the fights that I've seen he's not looked good. And Warrington has never looked better. And in fact, even defensively, he caught a lot of shots on his gloves and he slipped the rest. He's not taking many shots, and when he does take a good shot, he seems to have a good chin. I don't know if he gets hurt later on in the fight, but so far he's looking good. So yeah, I think actually Warrington versus Frampton could be reasonably entertaining. I mean, there's going to be a lot of punches thrown. I would probably favor Frampton to hurt him at some point and drop him or stop him, maybe mid to late rounds. But I don't know. It's going to be fun while it lasts, I think. So I mean, neither guy is probably ever going to be elite. But that doesn't matter. It's going to still be a fun fight.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, I do agree with Dave. Early on in the fight, I thought that it was all Warrington. I think the commentary team were doing what they sometimes do and landing sympathy punches for Selby that weren't really there. But then credit to him. I'm going to give Selby credit, because as the fight went on, he needed an opponent and an occasion like this to bring the dog out of him, and he did. He needed to respond under the adversity that was presented to him by the opponent, the crowd and all that, the cuts, and he did. He fought really admirably, Selby, and he should be proud of himself in defeat. It wasn't a split decision, I don't think so for a second, but Andy, what about the cuts and stuff? I mean, afterwards Selby was complaining about the head going in. There were definitely rabbit punches from Warrington, I did notice those, but I mean, he was cut badly at the end. You could see both the eyes were streaming, and the role of the doctor as well. The doctor, if we're led to believe from the commentary team, Andy, that she was looking to stop the fight maybe in the 4th or 5th round, and the referee sort of talked her out of it. Do we assess the role of the doctor in this instance? I mean, you know, she's from the same town as Warrington. Is she experienced in boxing? I mean, do we have to ask these questions about the doctor's role in all of this?
Well, if you ask any doctor, actually, I think they'll basically tell you they want boxing ban. Period. You know, it's just how they are. But I think she'd probably ask the question if we stop the fight would happen, because I think the referee basically says if you stop the fight, then now it goes to the cards. Sanagar was losing his shit, basically saying you can't stop it on something like that. Obviously, I think Sanagar maybe should take a wee bit of blame, because he couldn't get the blood. The cut over the left eye under control.
It was a bad cut though, Andy. I think, to
Well,
be fair, like.
Remember, Senior was losing his shit in the Eubank Groves fight because he couldn't get a hold of Eubank's cut in that fight as well. You know, Sanagar was in the corner there as well.
They must see him as a cutsman, though. If they got him in particular for the fight, he must have some kind of experience. I mean, he's a guy who's been in the game a long time. I don't know.
True, but you know, I think Mick the Rub or Stitch Duran and that, I think they would have had that blood under control. They definitely had it cauterized anyway, at least. But I know the first one was caused by a head clash. I think it was after a punch, the heads came together. So I don't know about the second one. Warrington basically used everything to his disposal there last night. He gave up a lot: size, weight, reach. He had to try and do something, I suppose. Okay, it was just some of the punches were kind of behind the head. Some were maybe kidney punches and that as well. But I'm not going to go too heavy on it and stuff, because this is the guy could have been easily outmanned in that if Selby had probably had a bit more left in that. But no, I've got no issues in that. I mean, it turned into a bit of kind of bloodbath, I suppose, for Selby. But I don't know. I mean, Selby 3 or 4 years ago, and that would probably have moved and boxed a bit more than that. I just think he got dragged into a fight that he just really wasn't capable of handling, because he simply hasn't got the gas tank for that weight anymore.
Okay, I'm not supposing anybody saw anything in the undercard. The only person with any chance of seeing anything possibly was you, Andy. I was out all last night, so I didn't actually see any of the undercard. Now, Jack Catterall got a first-round knockout win over this Sabire, who retired with a suspected dislocated shoulder. Darren Tetley, I do want to see this fight against Mason Cartwright. Cartwright looked like he'd been run over by a tractor at the end. It was quite remarkable. And Nicola Adams knocked out this Soledad Del Valle Frias. Apparently the fight went on for too long. Leon Woodstock got a win. O'Hara Davis got a win. Heffron, Willie Hutchinson, various other levels. Did you see anything of note on the undercard that stuck out to you, Andy?
I did, mate. I got home in time to see the main event. I was away celebrating my grand's 90th birthday last night, so I caught zero of the undercard. But I just noticed there that Nicola Adams actually knocked out her opponent in the 3rd minute. Women's boxing's only meant to go 2-minute rounds. Is that right?
That's right. I think the timekeeper made a balls up of calling the end of the round.
Well, I dare say he'll be working next week.
Oh, I'd say probably will, to be honest with you. We'll wait. I have a couple more questions regarding Warrington and Selby. There's no point in really asking them now. We'll wait until other people jump on. Like I said, Ozzy, possibly Rob Kelly usually jumps on as well. So we'll save the questions for them. We shall move on. Let's stick with the featherweight division. I think the 126-pound weight class. Gary Russell Jr. defending his WBC title against Joseph Jojo Diaz. I gave Diaz pretty much no chance last week whatsoever. I didn't expect him to do anything, but for the first 8 or 9 rounds, even though I thought Russell was just narrowly ahead, Diaz did pretty well. He was hammering away at the body until referee Kenny Chevalier, and no disrespect to Mr. Chevalier, but I mean, I think he has like a wooden leg or something. I've seen him refereeing before, maybe against the Lomachenko-Sosa fight. He definitely did that, and fair play to the dude. He can fairly get around the ring, but it does distract me slightly. But anyway,
that's annoying.
Yeah,
his voice is annoying. He just and he was definitely biased as well.
Well, that's what I was going to say to you, Dave. I mean, he started giving excessive warnings to Diaz, who was hammering away at the body, and then that sort of stopped him. And then Diaz, he was walking into range without throwing anything, which is an absolute no-no, because that just gave Russell license to lead off on him. I mean, tell me, Dave, what you thought about this one.
Well, the whole fight was pretty good. I mean, it started off actually better than it turned into a Gary Russell Jr. Kind of domination down the stretch until the 12th. But the first couple rounds were back and forth. Looked to me like Diaz was wearing Russell down. And Russell seems to have regressed himself a little bit. I mean, I remember he used to move his head a little bit more, be more defensively sound. Now he seems like he's just a warrior. I mean, he just rattles those combinations off, and he'll take a punch in return. He doesn't seem to mind. He did make adjustments though as the fight went, and he did get hit less. Although part of that, it looked like Diaz may have been tiring because he was being moved around by punches that had not been moving him earlier on in the fight. Part of it could have been also the ref's influence. I don't know. Who knows what's going on in Diaz's mind? But Russell Jr., it was entertaining. He threw a ton of punches, threw 300 punches in the first 4 rounds, which is outstanding, really. And he kept a pretty good output up through the rest of the fight as well. Visually, early on, it reminded me of Meldrick Taylor versus Julio Cesar Chavez, the first fight, because you had one, I guess, sort of slickster, not really slick though, because he was quite hittable, unloading these really fast, quick combos off on the plodding Latino's forehead, and the Latino gets his shots in as well, to the body, to the head. Got some really good looking shots in. I don't think he's a huge puncher though, certainly not a Chavez level puncher. But it was a good fight. And then once Gary Russell started to take over, it got a little bit more boring, and it was like, all right, this is disappointing. I'd hoped that Diaz would kind of show us a little bit more down the stretch. But in the 12th, he did come out of his shell one last time, and I think he had a very good 12th. Seemed to batter Russell around the ring at times there. I don't think he was hurt, but he did look to be maybe tiring, which would make sense that he would be tired after 12 rounds of that extremely high volume. And I mean, Russell does shoe shine a bit. I mean, there's no question. A lot of those punches are just taps and setting up some of his more powerful shots, but he also does throw with power. In fact, usually comes from the right hook. He's a southpaw, and they were both southpaws, which actually probably made the fight better. But Russell was landing a lot of really good left hands last night as well. And I seem to remember him having very brittle hands, and that was one of the problems with his career and why he's so inactive. But you could understand why his hands are breaking, because he throws kind of with abandon, and he doesn't necessarily target the jaw as much as he might. Like he'll land on the side of the head, the top of the head, the forehead. I mean, it's no wonder you're going to break your hand throwing like that. But no, it's a good show. Pretty good fight. Good matchup finally, because what's it been, like 5 years since we've seen Gary Russell Jr. fight? I actually haven't looked at his resume lately, but I mean, at least the Showtime crew called him out on it, saying like, why don't we ever see you fight? It's like Santa Claus. He comes once a year.
Well, his father said, Russell's father apparently said he wanted Gary to fight more often, but Gary said he won't because he wants to preserve his body, mainly, like you said, because of the hand problems.
Yeah, I heard that as well. So I think, was it Jim Gray who said, do you think we'll see a fight later on this year? He's like, I got to preserve my body, man. It's like, come on. Don't you want to preserve your finances as well? I mean, you're only young in boxing. You only have a pretty short prime. You got a few years. And last night was a good show for him, and a good win, and it does something for his career. Who knows how long we'll have to wait again. By then, we'll probably have forgotten about tonight's good win. But like last year's fight, he only fights like once a year, so last year's fight was a complete waste. It was shit. And like, you don't waste a whole year of your life for the sake of that shit fight that he had last year. I don't even remember who the opponent was. And then there was that other one against Patrick Hyland a few years ago.
He fought Oscar Escandon, I think, in his last fight.
Right, Escandon, who's pretty shit. Pretty shit. I remember when Tyson Cave schooled him and didn't get the decision. Escandon is not very impressive at all. And I think Gary Russell did stop him eventually. I'm not sure though. Yeah, that's not. I mean, that doesn't really mean much when you fight so irregularly. And I remember actually after he had lost to Lomachenko, Gary Russell saying 99 times out of 100, I win that fight. So I mean, show us. You know, like I want to. I mean, now they're at different weights, so who knows if we'll ever see that again. It was kind of a unexpected blue moon fight that both Arum and Heyman risked their guys, pretty high level guys in there early in their careers. But I'm glad that fight happened. Maybe we'll see it again. If not, I don't know. Gary Russell Jr. versus Frampton. I'd love to see that. Gary Russell Jr. versus what's the other guy's name? The guy who just fought Quigg. Valdez. Oscar Valdez. Love to see that as well. So yeah, let's get these two Brits sorted out. Who's the best one of those two, Frampton or Warrington? Most likely Frampton, but we don't really know at this point. We'll see for sure. And to get one of them out of the way, then the other one can move on to Valdez and Russell Jr. Maybe have like a little mini tournament there.
Yeah, I wouldn't hold your breath, Dave, to be honest. Gabe, I'm not sure how much you saw of this one. I did say last week that I thought Diaz was always a bit of a boring plodder, but he showed actually last night, I thought, that when he stepped up, he had dimensions to his game, and I actually really enjoyed the fight. I thought it was pretty decent. But as the fight went on, though, Diaz then became the fighter that I thought he was. He became that dreary one-pace guy from about the 9th round onwards, I think it was. Originally, he showed he was better than that, but then he reverted to type, lost his dimensions, and just let the fight slip away right down the stretch until he went for it in the 12th round. Why was that, Gabe? I mean, this is another loss for Oscar De La Hoya, unfortunately. He's put his guy over there on the PBC platform, and it just hasn't worked out. I mean, why was Diaz unable to just turn the pace up when he needed to, given that he was the guy who usually finishes fights stronger?
Well, I think he started feeling the punches. Gary Russell was landing some damn good punches on him, and he maybe isn't the most heavy-handed guy, but he's not a pillow puncher either. Whenever he's shoe shining, it looks good, it's fun, and it's incredible to see a guy with that kind of hand speed. But as the fight wore on, he kind of started, putting a little bit more mustard on his punches, and it was really good to see that. I think what happened was that Russell simply was starting to get countered every time he threw a punch, and so he kind of got a little bit gun shy. And when he started to get a little bit gun shy, his activity started dropping, and he's like you said, one dimensional anyway. And so I think there's a lot of guys that have a lot of different skills, but they fight at certain levels for so long that they only have to use one particular skill or intangible that they may have, whether it's size or ungodly power or whatever it is. And you always kind of see guys revert back to who they are at their core. I mean, whenever things get nasty and it's a tough fight, those guys always revert back to this natural style that they fight with. I think he's young too. I mean, I think part of it that he was maybe getting a little bit tired. And then the other part was too, like I said, I thought he looked like he was getting gun shy, because whenever he would start throwing punches, Gary Russell would start throwing punches. So I think that was part of it. I think Gary Russell's footwork was helping him out a lot too, because he seemed like he would get in position where he could be where he wanted to be, and then he'd get just enough out of range where Diaz didn't have the room that he wanted to work. And I think that helped out a lot for Russell. So I think it was a combination of things. I think it was some of the things Gary Russell was doing, but I also think it was some of the things that Diaz did that he could have done differently. He never really worked his way in. Like, he just wanted to get inside. And I mean, it's kind of like a technical no-no if you're a boxer, is to just walk your way in. Like, it doesn't work that way. Most of the time that doesn't happen. You can't just walk in on a guy, because you're going to get peppered. And that's kind of what happened too, to some extent. He would try to come in without throwing any punches, no jab particularly, and he was just simply right there to get hit. So, but early on, I thought it was a hell of a fight. It was a good fight, and his body punches looked heavy, and he looked big. And I was thinking early on that it looked like he was starting to hurt Gary Russell a little bit with some of those body punches, and I was thinking, we could see a great finish down the stretch. And I was honestly thinking that he would get Gary Russell tired and put him out later on in those first few rounds, because it just looked like he was able to move Gary a little bit more than Gary was able to move him. But the accuracy, the volume, and the movement all helped Gary Russell to get what he wanted done, and force Diaz to kind of fight in a way that wasn't conducive to what he was trying to do.
Gabe, talking of fading down the stretch, I think you're feeling a few late night body punches now. And do you want to give us a quick version of proceedings? You had to you were about to put some caps in some fella's ass last night.
It was actually our first thing this morning. I didn't go to bed till about 5:30, and home slice was outside, and my wife woke up because the dog was going ape shit. So she gets up and she tells me the door is open, and she says there's a guy sitting on the front porch. So I grabbed the piece, and I'm gonna go see what the fuck is going on. By the time I get to the door, he's gone. So apparently this motherfucker just like walked into the house. So he's better be glad he didn't come in the house while I was up, because he would have got it.
Why the fuck? Why did you not lock the doors, you rage?
Do what?
Why didn't you lock the doors?
I don't know, man. It's just one of those things. We don't lock doors around here. Probably a bad thing to broadcast, but you know, it's a small place, man. I don't know. It's just you know, people don't do that. It's a small place. We don't worry about that kind of shit.
Gabe, when you picked up the piece, did you put on the cowboy hat as well and the boots?
Be honest.
I left that shit by the bed.
Be honest. Did your cock and balls shrink?
No.
No, so when you picked up your gun, did it get you a rage, or did it get like, your balls drop like, fucking deeper than that?
I didn't quite catch that. Say that again.
Just saying, because you know, like if you get a burglar coming into your house and that, you know, your dick will shrivel up with fear. But if you've picked up a gun, so to speak, so it'll give you a bigger dick in that, you know.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's one of those things. You just do what you got to do. I mean, I think, you know, I believe in the past we've had some conversations, and you know, maybe you're not a fan of firearms, but you know, you got a family, and I think anybody who, you know, maybe is kind of the same persuasion that I am, maybe a lot of other Texans I know for sure, but if they're in a similar situation, you're gonna do what you got to do, right? I mean, you know, first things first, you got to take care of what's yours. And some nutbag coming to my motherfucking house ain't gonna last too long. So he flew the coop, though. He knew what was good for him. He said the Texas tornado was gonna get up in that motherfucking ass.
It was good to know that at least the clan give you a firearms training, at least, you know.
Fuck you.
Here, Gabe, just on a wider Texas point, hasn't there been like a big stadium or something built in Texas, and they're talking maybe this will draw the Charlos back to defend there? Is it maybe on Texas University campus or something like that? Maybe a Barclays Center, or have you got any more information?
I haven't heard anything about it, but it's such a big fucking place, man. Like the news from maybe down around the University of Texas is not going to be broadcast widely up here. I think the biggest things that are going on for stuff like that is the Star up in Frisco. It's near Dallas. Is the Dallas Cowboys like training facility, kind of their home base, and Errol Spence is fighting up there. It's a pretty fresh venue. Whenever Kirkland Kodo was supposed to happen, I think that was going to be like one of the first big events. Of course, so it's been around for a little bit. And then in Arlington, I know you guys aren't fans of baseball, but the Texas Rangers, who are the worst fucking team ever, they're building a new stadium.
Must be the Rangers part.
What's that?
No, I'm only joking because Andy was on. I said it must be the Rangers part of the Texas Rangers.
Yeah, it's they're somewhere. I think it's near their current stadium. They're building a new ballpark. I haven't heard anything about Houston, which is where the Charlos are from. My wife, I would assume she would know something about the UT stuff if it was around there. I don't know. There could be something. I just don't know about it.
Oh, no problem. I'll look into that. I just thought it might get the Charlos back rather than defending in, you know, California or wherever it is they're defending next. It might be able to bring them back to Texas. Well, anyway, yeah.
Because they have a lot of different places they could go. I mean, fucking San Antonio is a great fight town. You know, that's a good place, which it's not too far off from Austin. So they could do it down in Austin.
Is San Antonio where Paulie Ayala and the Ayalas were from?
Yeah, I believe so, yeah. And Paulie actually has a joint up in Fort Worth, a gym, and he trains out of. And he's got he works with folks that got Parkinson's.
Mm-hmm.
So he's got a gym in Fort Worth. I'm not sure about the rest of the crew. I think they still had the place down in San Antonio up until the brother, the bad seed,
Tony.
Yeah, Tony, till he OD'd or whatever it was that killed him.
Yeah. The father was the trainer, wasn't he? Tony Senior.
Yeah. I think wasn't there one more brother?
There was. I can't remember his name.
Yeah. There's gyms all over the place, and I mean, that's the thing about Texas. I think a lot of people miss out on it is that it's so goddamn big that there's a ton of places people could fight. Austin would probably be the lowest on the list. I would say, I mean, in Dallas, of course they had the Pacquiao fights, and this is going to be a great shot to any hand egg fans. The Dallas Cowboys had fewer wins at one point than Pacquiao did in their home stadium, which I loved every minute of. I don't know. Sorry to get off the track. There's a lot of fucking places, and surely they could do something big in Houston too, though. I mean, Houston's a big-ass place.
Yeah, Gabe mentioned the Texas gym's doing a lot with Parkinson's. I know before Ron Lyle, the old heavyweight contender, died, he ran the Cox Lyle gym in association with the Salvation Army up in Denver, Colorado. And they did a lot of work with people with Parkinson's up there, and they actually won awards for it. So it seems to be quite a thriving thing at the moment. So boxing doing good, giving back to the community as usual. And a final word to you, more wider point, really, just on Russell. I mean, he only has one speed, Gary Russell Jr., and that's fast. I mean, I love the way he commentates to his own combinations, with the old bop, bop, bop noises. I do like fighters who make the old bop, bop, bop noises, but he's more style than substance at times, I think. He thought early on that Diaz was going to be easy pickings. He threw a lot of shots to the head, to the guard, but Diaz wasn't going anywhere. But just on a wider point, Andy, we've got Leo Santa Cruz fighting Abner Mares in the rematch that we're all clamouring for on June the 9th. Whoever wins that, assuming it's going to be Santa Cruz and Russell, realistically, has to be the next fight, doesn't it?
Realistically, if you're a boxing fan, that's what you want to see, but I think we should just all calm our jets here and just say that, it was good to see Gary Russell in action for his annual appearance, and then it will be see you next year, because that's just how his career's going. I don't expect to see him in the ring anytime soon. I've stuck a pin under his career. I've kind of gave up on him. I think the last chance really was, I can't remember I gave him the last chance actually, but it just needs to be fighting more often. But if he's fighting his mandatory challengers, and that's what he's wanting to do, and if WBC allow him to do it, then that's what allow him to do. I mean, I noticed the Filipino guys at Mark Magzayo, he's starting to get himself well up in the rankings at the minute. He must be next in line for WBC. He's in line with WBO. He has got rankings, I believe, with the other two as well. So he's going to be chapping at the door very shortly as well. So that could be another opponent taken out of Frampton's line of sight for his upcoming Windsor fight and that. So who knows? I really don't know about Russell. Obviously, I mean, Abner Mares, Santa Cruz, we've mentioned before, we're not really all that bothered about this rematch. It's a pointless rematch. If we want to see any of the fighters featherweight fight each other, I want to see like Genesis, Savania. I want to see Magzayo. Not really bothered about Galahad. I seen, was it Martinez? Did he get a draw last night? I'm sure the European title.
Technical draw, I think. I'm assuming there was maybe a clash of heads or something.
I never read it. I just seen something somewhere that said that it was a draw or whatever. And obviously you've got some kind of like, you got the Australian guy, I forget his name at the minute. I think it might be two at the weight, actually, two Aussies and that. So featherweight, kind of like really, apart from like the top end guys and that, I think some of the contenders really kind of need to start lining up each other and fighting. And get themselves into some decent fights and that, because at the minute, as I say, I'm putting a pin under Gary Russell. Don't expect him to be fighting again this year or anytime soon, so to speak. So if he fights, good and well. If it's going to be a title list, probably not, unless does. I think he does PBC. He's a PBC fighter, isn't he? So I dare say Al could make the fight between him and Santa Cruz. Keeps it in house. Save Santa Cruz having to go to Belfast for a third fight, I suppose. But nah, I'm not that bothered, mate. I'm not really that bothered about him at all.
Yeah, I think it's a waste if he doesn't fight more often. He's got no zero to protect or anything, but it doesn't look likely, to be honest. I had it 117, 111 for the record. Shout out to Paulie Malignaggi. He's definitely becoming one of my favourite commentators. I know Ozzy's a fan as well. Malignaggi was talking about Russell's jab pretty early on. He said whenever Russell throws the jab, it will offset Diaz and stop him from coming forward. And as soon as Russell got on the jab around the 7th or 8th round, exactly as Malignaggi had predicted, he just stopped Diaz dead in his tracks. That was probably one of the reasons why he wasn't able to motor into range. So Malignaggi, he just notices things. I never was a big fan of him as a fighter, but he's spot on as a pundit. I think he's one of the best around. And then looking at that piss poor effort that Sky were putting forward last night, which I'm sure we'll come to soon with Stevenson-Jack. I mean, you know, the likes of Malignaggi are pretty decent on the old commentary front. In Australia last night, I mentioned it last week, the undefeated Maloney brothers, Jason 16-0, improved to 17-0, Andrew the same. Jason defeating Kohei Kono, who was a decent fighter back in the day, not so good these days, and Andrew defeated Richard Claveras. So they could be ones to keep an eye on, maybe not, who knows. Rob Barnett, friend of the pod, he's listening, no doubt. He said, I'm looking forward to your thoughts on Stevenson versus Jack. I had Jack winning by 3 rounds. He is fast becoming my favourite fighter, always in entertaining scraps and doesn't duck anyone. Hey to Dave Lowback, I hope you're not going to duck me. Tell me about this majority decision. Let's have a look. Guido Cavalieri had it 114-114, so did Eric Marlinski. Jesse Reyes was the outlier at 115-113 to Jack. Why does Jack keep on having these fights, Dave? These close ones, these majority draws, these decisions. He posited a reason afterwards that maybe people don't like Floyd Mayweather, but is Guido Cavalieri really sitting at ringside thinking, I'm going to give this a draw because I don't like Floyd Mayweather? It doesn't seem too plausible to me, Dave. Any reason why Jack's fights are always so close?
It's his style of fighting. You know, he does what he feels is just enough to win rounds sometimes. Maybe he thinks that he's going to get stoppage a lot of these fights, and sometimes he comes really close. Last night he did, and in the DeGale fight he did. Very close to stopping both Adonis Stevenson and James DeGale. But almost isn't quite good enough, and I can't say the scoring was bad last night, even though I did have Jack winning. I thought that he won just enough of those early nip and tuck rounds that he should have gotten the decision because he swept almost the whole last 6. Although I think maybe you can probably give Stevenson the one where he hurt him with that really nice straight left of the body. I thought the follow-up round, though, Stevenson tried to finish, tried to take advantage. Most of those shots were parried, and Jack ended up rallying back and hurting Stevenson again. Stevenson was spent at that point. His second win did not last very long. And I thoroughly enjoyed the final 6 rounds of that fight as Stevenson, the pimp, the Fraudonis, Avoidonis, Chickenson, kind of labored around the ring, getting pounded while blood flew from his face, and it was very enjoyable. I mean, I imagine what Ward would have done to him. I mean, would have schooled him, and that would have been fun. Ward's a guy who has I'd say much more consistent fighter. I mean, Badou Jack is consistent, but Ward is consistently active throughout the rounds. I think he would have possibly stopped Stevenson, if not just won almost every round. Stevenson still got the power, but he did not show a vehicle to get it home, except for one moment, really, in the 9th or 10th it was, when he got that body shot in. Early on, he missed a lot, and so he was still working. So I mean, you score most of those rounds for him, and he was getting some shots home, like glancing, but nothing clean. Almost all the clean work throughout the night was done by Jack, and it showed by the end of the fight. When the final bell rang, Jack raised his arms, running around the ring cheering, and Stevenson didn't even have the presence of mind to really know that it was the end of the fight. He just kind of slowly walked back to his corner, and I guess they told him over there that, yo, you won, you made it. And then he kind of was like, oh, I better celebrate and make it look good. So he went over to the ring post and waved, but he was exhausted. I would like to see a rematch. I would like to see Jack do a little bit more, because I think that he has it in him. Absolutely. He had the energy to run around and celebrate afterwards. He needs to leave more of it in the ring, and he could do it. Gabe, I am strapped. By the way, we're just chatting.
Dave has been known to clean his piece live on air in the past.
I must have missed that episode.
Yeah, it's locked up now because, you know, safety first. But what was I talking about? Jack, I'm still a fan. He did he did disappoint me early on in the fight, though, like because he just didn't do quite enough. He did appear to be fighting scared. He respected the power a little bit too much, I think, and he would have these flurries sometimes that made it look like he could do what he wanted, but then it was really disturbing in the 5th and 6th because he seemed like he was working his way into the fight, and in those 2 rounds he really shelled up and looked almost like he was hurt. I don't think he was. He was just like being moved by the shots landing on his arms and gloves, and it just looked like, wow, is this all he's going to do? But then, of course, he did turn it on, and we saw a pretty good fight. I enjoyed it. I would have enjoyed it more if Stevenson was flat out on the canvas, but you take what you can get, and I think Jack is the better fighter, and I think hopefully we see a rematch. I don't know if Stevenson will fight in the next 12 months or not, but he's probably going to need some time off. He got pretty busted up in the nose and mouth last night, so we'll see what happens. Rematch would be fun, though. Certainly, this is like the first challenge Stevenson's taken since, what, Tony Bellew? I mean, that's crazy. Like this is the first meaningful defense of his title, and it's a guy who came up from the weight class below. It's just not very. I mean, it just shows how unimpressive Stevenson's title reign has been, really. Aside from that one big year he had when he knocked out Chad Dawson, who, looking back, was, I mean, that's Andre Ward's leftovers. Since Andre Ward, he hasn't done a damn thing. So I'm pretty sure he just knocked the guy over who was past it.
Yep, just to remind everybody, it's 10 to the top of the hour. You listen to the Boxing Asylum Nuthouse podcast. Andy Patterson's on with us, Dave the Hater Lowback, Gabe Lewis, sponsored by the NRA this week, by the sound of it. Andy, tell me about Stevenson. He's quite a squat individual, but he has the big long arms, so he's able to get the jab going and the punches to the target pretty quickly, and he's a deceptively decent fighter in that regard. I thought that Jack gave away some of the early rounds because he just wasn't working, but once they both started hammering the body, it was beautiful to see. I love a good bit of body action, and Jack was hammering Stevenson's body, which, did he look a bit soft to you, Stevenson? I mean, I'm not saying he was flabby, but he had those sort of 40-year-old man boobs starting to form. He's definitely starting to, creep over the hill and slide down, isn't he?
I exactly thought the exact same thing as you did, mate, when I seen he was kind of soft, shall we say, no flabby, but he did look a wee bit kind of soft. Maybe he's just getting to that point now, 40-year-old man trying to make the weight. I would say he's quite big for the weight, actually, as well, so he's been making it, for a few number of years, but I'll give Stevenson some credit there last night, actually, because I've shit on him for a long time, and his title reign's been abysmal as well. But as a WBC champion and ex-ring title holder, I should say, or he is still classed as a lineal champion as well, I suppose, at the end of the day. But he showed a champion's heart in that 10th round. He was hurt, and to be honest, I feel like, say, round 7, 8, 9, they were easily Jack's rounds. The 10th, I thought Jack was winning it until he kind of turned the table a little bit. 11th was clearly Stevenson's as well. So, the 10th, 11th, how he responded in that, especially when he looked like he was hurt and he was like ready to go or whatever, he just turned it around with two body shots, and you could see Jack just basically kind of grasping on for the air and everything. But at the same time, as Dave says, it is a 40-year-old guy that Jack's went the distance with here. Okay, he's up in weight for the first time, but I think it reminded me a wee. Jack reminds me a wee bit. Again, this fight, Jack reminded me a wee bit like the Gale fight. It was clear that he was a better fighter, but he just didn't have it in him, or he's no got it in him for whatever reason, just to get the fucking deal closed and over the line. I thought he beat the Gale. He didn't get the result. I thought he might have just nicked it there last night. I'd expect him to win that on points. Didn't do it there last night for whatever reason, but he just can't get the job done. And I don't know if starting faster would have helped him. But if you saw, you could see Stevenson was still dangerous early in the fight. So you could see him, he was circling always to his left, trying to keep away for the powerful left hand. It's still clear that Stevenson's got power in that left hand. So he was obviously very, very respectful of it. But I don't know. I mean, as I says, the first 3 rounds you could have put them up anywhere you wanted. I think I said to you guys that as well, as the first 4 rounds, I was like, you guys are saying this is a good fight. The first 4 rounds are absolute shit. and it gradually got better in the fight, in fighting. We bit holding that as well for Stevenson. Obviously, again, at his age, he's going to have to kind of look for areas in that to try and kind of hold and, just try and bide a bit of time. But, Jack took the fight to Stevenson. He was beating him up at times. As I says, he had Stevenson holding for dear life for nearly kind of like quarter of the fight. Early rounds, I say, were questionable because no many clean blows were landing. Although I did think that Jack was displaying the better defence and probably the better footwork and movement as well. He was keeping Stevenson as well. If he doing what he does best, which is jabbing and trying to get the left hand in behind it and that as well. So I think all in all, in the end, it turned into a decent fight. I'm not really wanting to see a rematch, in all honesty. It seemed to take forever to get this fight made. The fight got made. It turned into a no bad one and no bad fight in the end. But,
I bet they'll make a rematch, Andy. I can just see, and then Stevenson going off after that into retirement, despite no matter what the result is.
Or he fights Tony Bellew at 197 pounds as per request. But who knows? But you should say it's the easy thing to do would be to make a rematch. Other than that, mate, I wasn't really scoring it fully closely. I think a draw is a fair enough result, maybe a point each way. But it was what it was. It was a decent enough end to a good fight. It was turning to kind of like a bit of brutal slugfest at times, like especially inside. There were a lot of heavy blows landing body and head. So you just don't know. As I say, Stevenson having taken shown that champion's resolve there last night. Because I says I've questioned it. He answered those questions last night, but you just wonder, with Jack, with heavy puncher himself, has he now taken whatever was best or what's left of his career in Stevenson out of him? So he might get the rematch done and might get it done better. The next fight he might take him out. Who knows? But I think he's definitely there to be taken. Stevenson absolutely there to be taken, but Jack just can't get the job done.
I think Bellew would beat him at this point.
Stevenson,
I don't know.
I think he would, and if I'm Bellew, I would go after that fight. Imagine if he got the win. No man who ever beat me once could beat me a second time. I've defeated every man I've ever faced.
Hey, to Dave Loback impression there. Everybody loves them, Gabe.
That was good. I liked it.
One thing I will say is that we've seen in 2 fights now that if you plant your feet and stand in front of Badou Jack, he will catch you with that left hook. That's in the case of the referee anyway. He does like hitting a referee. Ian John Lewis, former fighter himself, showing a really good chin last night, Dave. Who was the previous referee? Was it Griffin or I can't remember the other referee who Jack has punched with that left hook. But anyway, well done to the referee, Mr. Ian John Lewis, for taking that shot right bang on the chin. Gabe, tell me about Stevenson going forward. Is there any future for him? Will a potential Stevenson against Kovalev fight go into history as being, a what might have been moment along the lines of I'm going off the top of my head here, Lewis Bowe, I suppose, the Trinidad De La Hoya rematch. I mean, is Stevenson Kovalev held in that type of regard? Will we regret the fact it never happened?
I think for those of us that are around to witness everything that happened, I think we'll always kind of lament the fact that we never got to see it. But I think the two Ward fights, beating Kovalev and the way that he did, damaged some of the luster of that fight. And then I think, at this point, it's obviously past its sell-by date. I think everyone kind of is in the line of thinking now that maybe Adonis is getting old, and I think that maybe now we're also seeing the signs of Kovalev slipping a little bit. So I think it's one of those things that people that are just now paying attention to it, they won't have as much to say about it. They won't have as much concern about it having never happened. But I think that's one that all of us will look back, that like the people that are following through the whole startup when Kovalev came on the scene and we were able to see that fight not happen. We'll be able to say, well, that was one that should have happened. It would have been a good fight. It would have probably had a great show, great build up, great ending. And to me, I'll always wish it would have happened whenever they were ready for it, whenever they were primed, whenever it should have fucking happened. But the point of the matter is it didn't, and I don't think there's any use crying about it now. It's just going to be chalked up to one of those, like the Gamboa Wanma is one that one really still burns me up. I really wanted to see that fight whenever they just kept letting it marinate and marinate and marinate, and I don't know. I mean, the time will tell in the long run, but I don't think it's going to be one that people cry about forever. I think, like I said, I think the WARR wins damaged it to some extent, and made you think that Kovalev, with his air of invincibility, was beatable after all. And so, not to say that Adonis could have done it, but you kind of wonder if it would have been quite as good as we all thought it was going to be. But I think it's one of those things. It just happens in boxing sometimes. I don't think it should. I wish I weren't as okay with it as I am. But I think, a lot of us that are longtime fans of the sport, I mean, we just realize that this is how things go sometimes, and there ain't no changing it. Like, there's nothing that we can do as fans besides keep calling for the fights that we want and, put our money where our mouths are and pay for the things we want to see and those type of things. But, it's just, I don't know. It's just one of those things.
Yep. So the referee, by the way, for the Badou-Jack James DeGale fight, who took the shot, was Arthur McCanty Jr. We have rumours that Rapping Rob Kelly will be joining us soon. We'll keep an eye out for him. Nothing on the Stevenson-Jack undercard to speak of. What else have we got here? A fight that took place today, Andy. I'm not supposing you saw anything of it, but we have a question coming from Marcus Bellinger related to it. Heki Budler, this South African, down at 108. Defeating Ryoichi Taguchi. It was over in Japan for the WBA Super World Light Flyweight title. Was this an upset, or was, Budler has definitely improved anyway, after some early career setbacks?
I would say it's a bit of an upset, mate, especially Taguchi. He's been undefeated now since the Inoue fight, which would be, what now? Oh, I don't know, 3-4 years ago or something, mate. He's been on, a wee bit of a winning streak. He's been champion for a wee number of years and stuff. I think he beat Malindo, who beat Budler in his last fight, for example. So to go out there, I think it was, for what I read, it was a close fight on the card. So I would say it's a bit of an upset actually for Budler to go out to Japan and basically beat the local favourite like that and become, I think it might be a two-time light flyweight champ now to kind of go with his minimum weight titles as well. So fair play to Budler actually in that regard.
Yeah, definitely so. That leads me on to a question from Marcus Bellinger. I think I'll come to you, Dave, on this one. He said, in light of Josh Warrington's win, the continued good form of Badou-Jack, and for me personally, says Marcus, Heki Budler, what fighters have you written off or not rated who have turned out to be a lot better than you thought? One that I will say is a guy that Marcus mentioned, and that's Badou-Jack. After the Derek Edwards loss, I thought to myself, against Durrell, he didn't look that impressive. Then he got the win over Groves, and I was actually really impressed by Jack. Started jumping on the train. The James DeGale fight was excellent. Another good performance last night. But what about you, though, Dave? In light of Warrington, Jack and Budler, which fighters have you written off and not rated, but they've turned out to be a lot better than you thought and maybe proved you wrong even, Dave?
Jorge Linares, big one. I thought, because it was at first I thought, well, if he learns a little bit of defense after that DeMarco loss, I thought maybe he could learn a few things. But then the Sergio Thompson one happened, like basically right after that, and it's like, okay, this guy's got something seriously wrong. I don't think he's going to go very far. But look what he's done. And I wasn't on last week, unfortunately, but that fight was tremendous. Everybody said it well last week. You all broke it down well. It was a great fight. Really brought me back into the sport. As a fan, so because I was pissed off for a while there, but that was great. Lomachenko Linares, that's a fight I wouldn't mind seeing again. But either guy fighting anybody is good. And Linares went up hugely in my estimation in that loss, actually, because as much as I knew he was a good fighter and had done well to come back from those knockout defeats, and really made himself a relevant fighter in the game. I didn't know he was that good, and I didn't know he would be that competitive. And someone said it last week, but to land like a 5-punch combination on Lomachenko, you don't see that happening unless it's Salido, and it's about 4 punches to the nuts and 1 to the body. But that was impressive, and they were all to the head, and he hurt Lomachenko, I think, a couple times. So that was awesome. So that's one guy. I would say also Luke Campbell, a guy who fought Linares. I read him off after Mendy. I thought Mendy really did a job on him. I didn't think that was a really competitive fight at all. And Campbell came back and was competitive with Linares, so there was that. And I'm sure that there's tons of names. These are just 2 recent ones. Tyson Fury, when he lost to he didn't lose, but I think everybody thought that he lost to McDermott, right? The first time. And when he was punching himself in the face, was that against McDermott as well?
No, I think that might have been Lee Swaby, but I could be wrong.
I mean, it took a little while for me to get onto the Tyson Fury train, but I'm still glad I did it before, of course, he fought Vlad, so that I looked so wise and sage. But yeah, I have to admit, yeah, early on in his career, I thought this guy's never going to be shit. He had a few hardcores backing him. I think Tommy thought he was something back then. Emmanuel Stewart actually said he saw some potential in Tyson Fury. I remember that. I remember a thread in the old forum days, and of course Seb. So there were a few who thought that Tyson Fury had it in him to be something special. At first, I was not one of them, but it took a little while. I think it was around the Kevin Johnson fight I started to respect some of his game.
Oh God, I sat ringside for that.
It was putrid. It was putrid,
Jesus.
but he didn't get touched, and he had a good. She showed he had a good gas tank. He showed he had some discipline, and also in the Chisora fights, you know, he showed that he handled Chisora better than Vitaly Klitschko did. So I mean, that was something.
Well, we're going to be moving on to Tyson Fury later, I think. Andy, any for you? Anyone that's turned the tables and made you a believer?
Well, maybe the Charlos to a degree, because obviously I didn't really give a shit about them because of their name. I didn't know who was who. Fury, I got on that train kind of late. It was a night that he beat Klitsch Codley that I started kind of believing in Tyson.
I thought early on Terence Crawford was really negative and boring, but then he became really offensive and exciting all of a sudden.
Yeah, I'll give you that one as well. Other one I would probably need to say would be Errol Spence. You know, it's the way he handled Brook, but it's just, again, he's an active as anything as well. And I'm trying to think who else.
So a lot of people wrote Danny Garcia off after Theophane. The first Theophane fight. I guess they only fought Theophane once, didn't he? A lot of people thought Theophane won that fight.
What did he do to turn things around for you, Dave, after that then, Garcia? Because I wrote him off and I just continued to write him off.
Well, I never saw that fight, so I never wrote him off. I always thought he was a pretty good, solid fighter. And I always thought that the Matisse fight would be competitive. But a lot of people wrote him off because of the Theophane fight and the Kendall Holt fight, even though he won that fight pretty well. It was a split decision. No, I think I've always thought Garcia is a pretty solid fighter. I think he's gotten worse, actually. I think he's regressed a bit in recent years. And
well, the matchmaking has helped to regress him, hasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, I picked him to beat Matisse. Anyway, Andy, forget about that. Tell me about Steve Jamoy. Bit of an upset, was it? He got knocked out in the opening round by Florin Cardos.
Did he? I never noticed that.
I remember you mentioned it last week, you see, and I saw it on the BoxRec schedule. Vacant EBU title in Belgium. He got knocked out in round 1 by this 18-1 guy. So, I mean, Jamoy we're off the hype train now. Jason Easton's got beaten. Jamoy's got beaten. I know it's all going tits up, isn't it?
I'll need to go and try and find that fight then, mate, because that was a bit of an upset. That was a European title fight, I'm sure, as well. But,
it was the EU. It was the EU. You know, the lesser one. Yeah.
Title. All right, no worries. Then I'll need to try and find that. That was a shocker, actually, because obviously I've no idea what this Florin Cardos looked like. I know he'd been fighting out the UK. I forget where it was somewhere down south anyway, but. That's a bit of a shocker, actually, getting stopped like that, because if you look at that fight against Jason Easton, actually, that was an absolute war. I mean, expect it to be a bit better than that, getting stopped in one round.
Might have took a bit out of both guys. Kiko, as well, as we mentioned, it ended up in a draw, but it's a technical draw or a technical decision after the 3rd round, so I'm assuming there was some kind of infringement or infraction or whatever, so I don't know whether those guys will fight again. But anyway, Ozzy's joined us on the call. Good to have you on, Ozzy. Let's hit you straight away with a lead into the Warrington-Selby fight with a question from Joey at Master Mode 33. How fortunate has it turned out to be for Warrington by leaving Eddie Hearn? Does the pod agree, as in you, Ozzy, with me, as in Joey, that had Warrington remained with Hearn, he would have been shipped off to the USA for a title fight? I'm not actually sure about that. I think Warrington's fan base was that big, Ozzy, that I'm not sure Eddie would have shipped him off to the USA. But anyway, has it been a good thing, Lim, leaving leaving Eddie for Frank? Tell me what you think, Ozzy.
I think it's a bit of both, really. To be fair to Hearn, he wanted to make the Selby fight. I think it was around 12 months ago now. Warrington was getting married, so he basically said, look, I've got too many things going on. People saw that as a duck, but in reality, he does have a life outside of this. People felt like he missed his opportunity, said it was a duck, but they said, look, we'll take the fight in September or something like October. It didn't happen. Coincidentally, then ended up, I think he went on to box Patrick Hyland then. Warrington has since said basically that Sky was struggling for a show and they needed to go somewhere. And what can you rely on Warrington to do? Go and put 6,500 in an arena. I believe that towards the end of his career at Matchroom, he was growing frustrated that certain people like basically Katie Taylor, Conor Benn were receiving better opportunities, more airtime, etc., things like that than Josh. And he felt like with his stature at the time, I think he was like European level, highly ranked in all of the governing bodies. He wanted to be one of the bigger fish. And when he can sell tickets like he does, he has a point. He's jumped ship to Frank, and at the end of the day, he's one of Frank's big boys, and he's backed that up. So I think for Warrington, he is definitely one of the bigger fishes in the Warren pond. I think Hearn would have made this fight. He openly said it. I don't dispute that. But at the same time, I do think it was ultimately a good move for him. Frank's got him a world title shot in his hometown, Ellen Road, which people said wouldn't sell. I think they did 25,000 last night. So fair play. I don't think you can argue with it, really. They've ticked the boxes. I think he's had. Did he have 2 fights prior to this? Was it Martinez and Seelan?
Yes.
And then they've gone on to Selby. So yeah, I think it's been a decent move. To be fair, I think he did what he did with Matchroom. I think you've got to applaud that, whether people rate Warrington or not. He asked everything. Was asked. He started at central area level, went through the ranks, the traditional route: English, British, Commonwealth, European, Fringe, WBC, IBF belts, etc., things like that. And the experience paid off for him against Lee Selby, who I think has probably outgrown the weight. He looked like a drug addict on the scales again, just gaunt, no colour. And I think it's one of them where ultimately trying to be a force at the weight, but taking too much off has ultimately taken its toll. And kudos to Josh Warrington. He had a game plan. He stuck to it and it worked. The cut did not help. That definitely played a telling factor. But one thing I would say is that it just shows how much you need a professional cutman in your corner. Chris Saniger, really good experience, things like that. But in terms of a cutman, I think it pays to have somebody who's experienced, knows the way around it, because ultimately it can make a difference for you. But a brilliant performance by Josh Warrington. We're not going to see the Frampton fight next. I don't really know what they'll do with him, to be honest. I think it's difficult. They're not obviously going to go back to Ellen Road straight away, so it'll be back to the first direct arena.
What about Kid Galahad, Ozzy? We're seeing him very highly ranked in the IBF. That would be a natural one, given his name.
Yeah, to be honest, I think they're pushing for Galahad to be made mandatory. Not that he fucking deserves it or anything, but he's got a selling point. I mean, Galahad, juicer. He's from Sheffield, so there's a bit of a derby there as well.
Yeah.
I mean, they talk a good game about Galahad, but ultimately, have we ever seen it? I remember watching a fight with Galahad against Jazza Dickens, and in my opinion, Dickens was winning the fight. His tank just emptied, and Galahad pulled out a decent stoppage in the end. But it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, all in all, I wouldn't be shocked to see some absolute tin pot defence for Warrington back at home.
We were saying,
for
obviously, the
Sky
top
Racing.
15 is piss poor, like in the IBF.
I've not seen it. I'm just loading the laptop up now just to have a look. I mean, I'm trying to think of any like potential domestic names they can put him in with, but there really isn't anyone floating around who you think that might work. Bar Galahad, he's not attached to anybody. We know Dominic Ingle's close with Frank Warren because he trains Billy Joe Saunders and now Willie Hutchinson. So it's going to be interesting to see. It's a shame Frampton Warrington won't happen next. I think that'd be a fun fight to watch. That. I also think it could happen in both Leeds and Northern Ireland. I think it'd sell really well in both areas. I mean, Selby didn't really contribute anything to the, to the tickets last night. So I mean, Frampton, he'll bring an army of fans over, and likewise happening in Belfast. It's going to happen both ways. So it's for sure. Whether people agree, it's a stadium fight. The tickets will sell. It's just a shame it won't happen next. But no, great performance by Josh Warrington. I think you've got to hold your hand up and say, well done. And a shout out to Steve Wood as well, who's, I think it's fair to say that he's probably done one of the best jobs managerial-wise with Josh Warrington than probably any other fighter. The opportunities he's got him, the exact right times, and it's ultimately paid off.
Yeah, I think Steve's like a Steve Goodwin, Mark Dunlop type, doing all the hard work behind the scenes. Just before you run off, Ozzy, actually, we've got a question in from Babs_SP, who's asking for your opinion specifically on this one. I thought things looked quite good last night, but there were a few bollocks ups on BT Sports. And Babs has said, when people criticise Frank Warren shows for poor production, etc., do you feel that they are stating legitimate gripes or just following the textbook Hearn jabs taken at his rivals? Now, I do happen to think that they are following the textbook Hearn jabs, but also last night there were a few balls ups from Frank himself, not necessarily always his fault. I thought Paul Dempsey was way off colour. But what do you think about the whole production thing and all that, what Babs is mentioning?
I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. I think a lot of people enjoy seeing mishaps on other shows so they can run off to Eddie Hearn and, say, look at this. Like when I think it was the opening BT show at the MEN Arena, and there was no, they struggled to sell tickets, and people have gone to the show and they're at the show, and rather than watching the fights, they're taking pictures of empty seats going, this would never happen with you at Eddie Hearn. And it's all for that precious like or retweet. Production-wise, I think it's unrivaled. Sky's production is excellent. But if you want to watch a decent production, go and watch The X Factor or Britain's Got Talent or something like that. If you want to see all these flashing lights and things like that. I care about the fights. Now, last night's card, bar the main event, and Mason Cartwright and Darren Tetley was shambolic. Absolutely shambolic. But they put no effort into it because they were happy with the tickets sold. So, essentially, they thought, well, what's the point? I don't care about the names. I said it last week. He basically thought, right, he's got Jack Catterall, O'Hara Davis, Mark Heffron, Nicola Adams, don't care about her, a couple of others. They're his bigger names, but they were in against absolute tin cans. And it's rubbish. It's rubbish to watch because there's no fun seeing like Jack Catterall won in the first round last night. Now, he's a friend of mine, Jack, but it does absolutely ball all for him, that. Pointless. Camp wasted for me. He was levels above that. He could have beaten him with one arm. Pointless. O'Hara Davis, he didn't even... Pointless again. But to be fair, he's in with Josh Leather in, 4 weeks? Fine. I can exclude that because he's got the Leather fight coming up. The rest of him is pointless. Another thing I didn't get is they bigged up this Kaiser Chiefs thing and then they cut him off after 20 seconds. And that, to be fair, though, that is not Frank's fault. That he's not sat there deciding what adverts come on. And that is something BT have got to look at. You don't pull in that. Essentially, the band were like in a sense like a chief support of sort. They were pulled in for Josh Warrington, and they cut him off after 20 seconds. And you think, well, what's the fucking point? It's just basics, and admittedly, you don't see things like that go wrong on Sky. But at the same time, things have gone wrong on Sky, and people don't pick them up. And I said it. I was out on Twitter last night, and Dave fucking Allen was there, and he's in his element. He chirps up about everything negative about every other show, bar Matchroom, and because Matchroom have paid his purses on a couple of times, he says nothing negative, and he's like, "Oh, that's not what I'm about," and thinking rubbish, absolute rubbish. And it's people like him that piss me off. because he's there, because he thinks Eddie Hearn, right, he's paid my wages, I can't say anything bad. This is Dave Allen, who wanted £100,000 package to fight Daniel Dubois, a 60 grand purse and 40 grand in tickets. This is Dave Allen, that best win is David Howe ×2 and Tom Dallas. And it's people like Dave Allen who then influence the lesser fans in the sport who don't follow it avidly, who then big up to Hearn about pointing out all these mishaps. As long as the fights are decent, I don't really care. And I've seen videos from last night from when Warrington walked out, and the atmosphere looked absolutely superb. Absolutely superb. The sound sounded fine. The fans were absolutely loving it. 20-odd thousand there. What wasn't to enjoy about it? In terms of that, yeah, things went wrong, and you would expect more from BT. They've pumped a load of money into football, boxing, and things like that. And yeah, things do need to improve. Paul Dempsey, he's a lot better than that. And like some of the names, things were shocking, absolutely shocking. And it's wrong, really. At the end of the day, they were getting things blatantly wrong, and the professionals at the sport, and it's wrong. But going back to the question, I do think people look to actively seek out faults in shows just to go and get that like or retweet off it. But what's the point? Like nobody cares. Nobody cares. If you're that bothered about a bloody light or a mispronunciation of a name or something like that, who cares? But like I said, I will slate any promoter. Last night's card was garbage, but I ain't going to go and seeking out thinking, right, yeah, because a light's gone off or something like that. Otherwise, you could do it. You could pick faults in everything. Absolutely everything.
Good stuff, Ozzy. Ozzy going in deep there. Good to have him on the show. Just for comedy value, quickly, I'm going to read out the IBF top 15 just to keep everybody at home in the loop. We've got Kid Galahad at number 3. Number 2 is not rated. Nathaniel May, followed by Raya Abe, Satoshi Shimizu, Mark Magsayo, Kanzu, name the rest of the names here, including Toka Clary, Jack Tapora, Jesus Sanchez, Genesis Savania, know him, Brian De Gracia, Jose Harrow, and at number 15, the well-known Carmine Tomasoni. Those are some of the names that Josh Warrington has to pick from. Let's get you in, Rob Kelly. You might get yourself into the top 15 at featherweight if you're not careful at this rate, judging by some of those names. Question in from, who's this question from? Richard Swig. How much does Warrington remind you, Rob, of Ricky Burns? How much is this like when Ricky Burns beat Rocky Martinez? He's an unfashionable fighter who has exceeded expectations. I made up for him, to be honest, said Richard Swig. You made up, Rob?
Yeah, well, I know I don't often get it wrong. But no, I got that one completely wrong. Like I thought Selby was going to be. I think we all kind of preempted that Selby was going to struggle at the weight. Don't think anyone thought he was going to look that bad. However, I'm not taking one single thing away from Warrington on his performance. Full house there. I mean, I said last week as well that Selby would be more of a draw for Frampton. Jesus, like they could easily go on the road to Northern Ireland. Don't know if they're going to follow the fighters in Belfast. Don't know if that's going to be a good idea. But I definitely watch Warrington versus Frampton down the line. But in terms of the fight, Warrington just imposed his will on him. And I love the way 1 minute he's chasing him down, the next minute he's boxing on the back foot, and then he springs into a flurry. And he just, like Selby, I always like Selby's style because he's a little bit loose and everything. But he just couldn't get off last night for the first rounds. I thought the cut affected him badly as well. Could have been probably stopped on the cut, but no, clear winner at Warrington. I mean, I suppose, yeah, he has shades of Ricky Burns, also has shades of Hatton versus Costa-Zoo. Not that Selby's anything like Costa-Zoo, no disrespect to him, but just the performance, the energy levels from Warrington and everything. And like I said, I said in the group chat, I met a girl yesterday that I used to work with, and her fella had gone to Leeds for the Warrington fight, and he's not even a fight fan. Like, he's a Leeds fan, so he went just to, you know what I mean, so he's got a hell of a following behind him, so he's definitely got potential for, and glad for him that he's after kind of rising from the Phoenix after his time with Matchroom. And like I said, I definitely watched that Frampton Warrington fight down the line. Let him have a mandatory, man. He's just won a world title in front of his home fans. Let him have a mandatory and then set that fight up with Frampton.
Who will the mandatory be though, Rob? That's the question. Samiso, Shimizu, Kanzu, Nathaniel May.
Could be shimmy you, shimmy you.
It'll be Galahad. It is going to be Galahad. I'm 90% sure, and it is going to be Galahad.
Well, I don't want to see Galahad getting a world title shot, to be honest with you. I think that says it all, like, doesn't it? But you know, quickly off of Galahad. Like, I'm sick of talking about him, to be honest with you. So yeah, so that way, yeah, saw the Warrington fight, saw the Selby fight, I'm not sure what you covered because I kind of came on late, so I'm sure you got the most of it by now. Like.
No, but I'm going to come to you in a second on Adonis and Gary Russell. Just quickly before we do so, an L for chat stalwart Jason Chukwu from last week. He said, I quote, "This podcast is going to shit, saying Hughie Fury doesn't deserve a world title shot, L number 1, and picking Warrington over Selby, L number 2 for you, Mr. Chukwu." Let's go back to Rob Kelly. Adonis, Gary Russell, see either or, both, neither?
I think there's just on it. I think there's a false representation of the pod that we are against the Furies. We love the Furies on this pod. What are you talking about? Like, I picked Fury to beat Pat. Like, we love the Furies. Stop bullshitting in the chat. But,
I'll give Chukwu L number 3. Adonis Stevenson's performance last night.
He's raging in the chat tonight, by the way. But I'm actually so pleased that I called Warrington to the letter there last week. Actually, fucking listen to me in future.
But yeah, in terms of Adonis and ADONIS-JACK, like, I think we're buzzing like for another two weekends of great fights. Last weekend we had technical fight. This weekend we had a war of attrition and a war of fucking malnutrition for Selby. But then humdinger fight.
That's a good one, Rob. Well.
But like, yeah, a right humdinger of a fight in Canada. Like, I think we kind of got like the hometown fighter getting the benefit of the draw in a close fight that he probably clearly lost. Like, thing about ADONIS-JACK's style is like it's hard to kind of because he's not outstanding at anything, but he's just solid in every other department. That he doesn't like win too many rounds definitively. So there could have been a couple of nip and tuck rounds there as well. I kind of understand what he was doing in the jab in the first half because Adonis was just kind of flicking his jab, like looking to set up the left hand the whole time. And normally, like, you'd step into your jab then, but obviously he's worried about walking onto the left hand for the whole fight. So and then, you know, he got a little bit closer to him and started to rough him up. And I thought he kind of won 5 rounds on the spin. And I suppose Adonis's performance in the second half of the fight was pretty brutal, but I think his age is catching up with him. But he showed touches of what we've missed out on from him not being in the ring like as often as we want to see him. Like, he still had the punch, and he almost turned the fight around in the second last round, I think. So, but I think Jack was a clear winner, and I think it was he's unlucky there to be on the end of a draw. But it's happened in Canada before. I'm sure it'll happen again. So.
Okay, one man who was there last night at ringside getting all the big interviews. It's Ben Faruqi. Ben, tell me about Selby Warrington from your vantage point.
Yeah, it was a good fight, and Andy's right. He did call it spot on. Funnily enough, I was with Josh at Dickie's gym in Batley on Thursday evening. That was the last time he was sort of going to be in the gym before the fight. And I was speaking to Josh's dad, Sean, and while Sean was telling me what sort of bits of the game plan were and what he'd been studying about Lee and stuff, I was thinking, has he spoken to Andy? Because everything Andy said on the show last week is exactly what he's saying to me now. He was talking about the Montiel fight and all these other fights, and I was thinking, this is what Andy was talking about. So Andy did get it bang on there.
The real guru, Ben. The real guru.
Yeah, the real guru. So yeah, Josh did, funnily enough, when I said to you guys in the chat when I was there, and he did mention this yesterday. He could feel the nerves. And he did look a bit sort of on edge, and I think the sort of thought of performing in front of all those people, all the Leeds fans at Elland Road, etc., was sort of weighing on his shoulders somewhat then. But I also mentioned that Selby's weight. He was obviously big at the weight, and everyone's been mentioning that, but that he wasn't sort of sweating at all when they were doing the public workout, and that's either a sign that he's made weight perfectly, I suppose, or that he's got nothing in him left. And I think that might have been, not taking anything away from Josh's performance, of course, but I think that might have played a factor, obviously, yesterday. The main event itself, I mean, I know Barry Jones at one point had it 6-3, and obviously the split decision to me from where I was ringside was insane. I was sat next to Glenn McCrory, and we were there was a few other outlets around us, and nobody sort of had given Lee, you know, more than a round or two. Maybe
I'm sure Glenn saw about 4 fighters in the ring there, didn't they?
No, Glenn was sober as a judge yesterday. He was fine, or at least I think he was.
About Barry Jones, Ben, do you think that he got caught in a sort of position where it's the same with judges almost, where he's Welsh, like Selby, obviously, and he's trying to moderate himself, and he's got all these things going on about scoring the fight. I don't want to appear to be seeing this. I don't want to appear to be seeing that. You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny when you're in those positions, because if you're I don't know if he's close to Selby or if he knows Selby, but if you are in that position with someone that you, one, have a relationship with, and then two, you're working for someone else, you can find yourself in sort of an awkward situation. And maybe that's what happened to him. Maybe that's why he was scoring it the way he did. I don't know what his final scorecard was. I just saw that on Twitter while I was at the fight, that he'd given it 6-3, and we were, you know, I think it must have been like the 10th or 11th round, and Glenn McCrory had maybe given 1 round to Lee. And obviously, you know, we might not see everything the judges see, or we don't get all the angles, etc. But you know, Josh's defense was impeccable last night. When they were, you know, coming together, Josh was landing everything, and he was just coming out on top every single time. When he was going in, when he was coming out, you know, he just you know, he fought a fantastic game, and it was, funnily enough, it was what they were working on Thursday, what they were talking about. Sean and Josh were in the ring, and they were just talking about the game plan. And, you know, his dad was like saying, don't lead in with the left to the body. You can't do that. You've got to make him move to the right. And that Lee Selby hit, he can't move to the right very well. So you've got to try and make him do that. And they were practicing it. And if you watch the fight, you know, he followed that really well. He did say afterwards that he did get carried away at some points, but he did follow his game plan quite well. And I don't know if you saw it, noticed it on TV, but there was points of the fight where Lee Selby looked really hurt and like almost hung on to Josh a few times.
Fatigue,
Josh did say he felt, yeah, Josh did say that, you know, he sort of he could feel that. But other cards on the fight, the standout fight was probably Darren Tetley versus Mason Cartwright.
Cartwright looked a state, didn't he, at the end?
Yeah, I mean, he was sort of dominating for the first 3 rounds. Darren didn't look like he wasn't moving well. He wasn't moving his head. You know, he just didn't look himself. And like I mentioned to you guys, his granddad did pass away a week or 2 ago, and it was his funeral on Friday. So I think that played on Darren's mind, and he obviously wanted to win it for his granddad. But as the fight progressed past the 3rd round, Darren started to bring it back. He was moving better. He was landing some solid punches on Mason, and Mason started to tire a bit. I think Mason's game plan might have been to sort of try and stop Darren, and so he was throwing some heavy punches in the early rounds. And I think Darren, when Mason started to tire, Darren was catching him with some good shots. I think he busted his nose maybe in about the 4th or 5th round, dropped him in the 8th, and then he got stopped in the 9th. Darren landed, I think it was a big left hand, and you just, you know, obviously bust all the side of his lip. It was a big cut, and it didn't last much longer than that. The referee got called, the doctor got called in, and it got waved off. But yeah, I was really made up for Darren, because he's from my hometown of Bradford. I've been following him for a long time. Other than that, the only point I would make was that Nicola Adams, I think the round went for 3 minutes instead of 2 minutes, and she was pummeling that Argentinian girl. I can't remember her name off the top of my head. But you know, it's not good that sort of thing is happening. I think a few people have mentioned that on Twitter today, that, you know, if this girl thinks she's in a 2-minute round, we can't be letting it go for 3 minutes, because people can get hurt. But I just caught the end of what Ozzy said before I came on. And yesterday was a fantastic show. Everything about it was brilliant. I have seen fights at Josh's, you know, sort of scuffles and things at Josh's shows before, because people may obviously refer to the Leeds fans being, you know, X, Y, and Z. But yesterday, you know, they were fantastic. I didn't see anything. You know, it was packed out for the areas that they had for the fans. It was packed out, and the fans were fantastic. You know, everything about it was spot on. The show was fantastic, and obviously with Kaiser Chiefs and everything, it was really good. So yeah, anybody who sort of is on the Matchroom FC bandwagon slagging off Frank's shows, and like Ozzy mentioned, people like Dave Allen just sort of constantly slating other shows like Frank's. I think it's a bit out of order. Yesterday was really good. It's probably the best Frank Warren show I've been to. But yeah, it was a really professional sort of event yesterday.
Great stuff, Ben. Stick around for as long as you're able to. Don't forget to go and visit Ben over at Boxing News TV. We're going into the championship rounds now, final bits and pieces. We have Dave with us, Andy, Gabe, Rob, and Ozzy. Don't forget to hit subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to this right now, YouTube, iTunes, whatever it is. Just tells them that you're happy to listen to us. You enjoy what bullshit we come off with every Sunday evening, 8 o'clock onwards. Let's have a look then, shall we? Gabe, hopefully you're still awake. Where shall we go with you? Let's go to Canada, shall we? Quebec. David Lemieux is returning for the first time since his schooling at the fists of Billy Joe Saunders. He's going in against Karim Achua. Now, here's a couple of good titles for you, Gabe, on offer. The WBC International Middleweight title and the WBC Council Francophone Middleweight title are both on the line, so a couple of esteemed titles there. What about Lemieux, Gabe? I mean, are they going to try and build him back up, a few more wins, a few more knockouts, and then try and put him in against someone like Canelo? I mean, where can Oscar really go with this guy?
Well, I think he's one of those guys that provides some solid value in terms of the right matches. If you put him in there with the right guys, he's going to put on a good show because of the way that he fights and the power that he has. If it weren't for those two things, the way that he fights and the power that he has, then I think it would be much more difficult. But they can bring this guy in anytime they want to make a fight with a guy that's got a good, not good, at least recognizable name maybe. His value's fading every time he steps in the ring lately because he's been taking losses left and right and hasn't looked particularly good in quite some time to me. And that schooling by Billy Joe was top friggin' notch. I mean, that was a good show. So if they were going to do something, I mean, they could bring him in for a Canelo. I think he's going to be one of those guys that they'll keep putting him in good fights in the interim, fights that are good for him, rather, so that he can get an opportunity to kind of build himself back up, get going on the way again, and then possibly have hold on one second.
Gabe's just kicking out the kids, Mrs. Lewis, somebody. Maybe this is this guy who's on his doorstep again. He's coming back in again when he unmutes himself.
Your shots fired.
Oh, that's what I was just about to say. Actually, could be a live shooting. Who is it, Gabe? Have you shot them? Have you killed them? What's going on here? You haven't shot your wife by mistake, have you?
Like Oscar Pistorius.
No.
He didn't have a leg to stand on in court.
Involved in that shooting. Oh shit! No, I'm sorry, guys. It was a neighbor kid. That they were coming to look and see if my boys were here. God damn it! Where was I at?
You were talking about Lemieux. If you want to go and mop up the blood, Gabe, then finish up quick.
Yeah. Sorry. Lemieux. If they match him up in a good way for him, they'll build him back up to have a good set up for a bigger profile fight with a guy that they value more. I think he's a good undercard guy, so they can put him on an undercard and instantly add a little bit of value to it for tickets and for TV. But as far as I'm concerned, I mean, his time at the top is just done. I never have been particularly high on the guy. Like I said, though, he's got some good traits that make him valuable to the average fan. And put him in the right fights, let him build himself back up like a good promoter, and then throw him to the wolves like a good promoter always does.
On the undercard, excuse me, everybody knows that I'm on the Uzbek and Kazakhstan hype trains. One Kazakhstani fighter of note. I'm not sure if I'll be getting on the hype train because I don't want to be pronouncing this name every week. Batajan Jukembayev, 12-0 super lightweight with 10 knockouts. We'll keep an eye on him. We'll also keep an eye on another big gun coming on the pod, Adam Smido-Smith. Smido, just in time, Dean Mills was throwing in a question earlier. He said, when you go over previews, I know that Smido and Ozzy love a cheeky bet. Is it possible you could do either a bet of the week feature or, if possible, a bet of the match previewed? What do you think? Well, I think that sounds like a good idea. Now, there's no discernible main fight next week, Smido. But is there any value coming up over the next few weeks? Any bet we should be keeping an eye on, in your learned opinion?
You've caught me on the hop there, Steve. I don't even know what's coming up. I don't even like boxing anymore. I'd just come on and just give a bit of a casual corner. Maybe instead of a betting update, I should just do casual corner, and Oz can do the betting.
What about the weekend then? What about Selby Warrington? Where did you have your money, Smid, or you're not even betting at all now?
No, I didn't play it all on that, but that's why I'm ringing in. Really, it was a good fight. I thought Warrington. We knew he needed to do the old bulldozer tactics, Ricky Hatton-esque from Kostya all them years back, and he did that pretty effectively. Obviously, he won the fight, but most impressive for me from Warrington was his ability to counter Selby last night and reply with attacks rather than initiating every attack. I think that was really impressive from Warrington. His defence has improved over, as we've seen, in his last few fights. He brought that to the table yesterday. Work rate and engine and game plan and pacing himself throughout was what we expected from him, and he certainly delivered that. But yeah, the most impressive part for me, Steve, was the countering and replying to Selby's attacks as well as initiating them himself. And I thought that obviously Selby was cut badly, particularly on one eye, and pretty bad on the other eye. I think that they alluded to it in the commentary. Sanagar told off the ref and the female doctor pretty rigorously, and I think the ref was almost inviting the doctor to stop it, because he said, if you stop it now, it goes to the cards, and almost explaining the rules. It was a bit of a strange incident. That was
funny. That his trainer was screaming at him, "It's nothing. He can keep going." And the ref's like, "Get down, please." But I did think it was good on the ref, though, to keep the trainer from cleaning it up, because a lot of refs, they kind of missed that. They let the corner get in there and work on the cut a little bit. Yeah. And it's against the rules, though. So good on the ref for following it to the T there.
Yeah, and at the time, I agreed with Sanagar in that it wasn't enough to stop the fight, but I think that was only in the 5th round. I think, towards the back end of the fight, I think another inspection would have been warranted, given that Selby's initial cut had got worse and he'd been cut again. I thought almost that the ref was scared to have it inspected again when it probably did warrant it. I'm not saying it warranted stopping the fight, but it probably did. It probably did deserve another inspection given the damage that was done. So yeah, fair play to Warrington. I didn't necessarily make a pick on the fight, but I was looking forward to watching it. And yeah, Warrington, he knows. I think he knows what he is. He doesn't talk a massive game like some of the boys we've seen over on Sky. I know he's not there anymore. He's clearly impressed in front of our eyes. I think he's been the matchmaking's been pretty good. I know they've tested him against different kind of people, including Kiko Martinez. I know he was over the hill, but it provided a different test. The one thing I could say about Selby is his title reign has been not great in quality, uninspiring given location of fights and opponents, and performances within those fights, i.e. going the distance a lot. He looked significantly bigger than Warrington last night. He does fight bigger naturally anyway, his style, so that was quite clear to see. But he's obviously struggling at the weight, and I tweeted halfway through the fight that the weight would be blamed, and so it was. In regards to your initial question, Steve, I do apologise for not being prepared. There's not actually that many fights at the moment. It's probably the least I've ever seen of upcoming fights that are available to bet on. Maybe that's not a great indictment for where we are at the moment. We go up. I know we have a summer break, but we've got the likes of. George Groves and Callum Smith is still there to bet on, but possibly won't go ahead on that date. There's just not a whole lot to go on. I know Fury's had his opponent announced today. Pretty much what we was expecting. Terry Flanagan's a strong favourite to beat Maurice Hooker at 1-5, probably a little bit short there, but I would give Hooker a bit of a chance in that. Flanagan's rightly the favourite, and then really we've got next weekend. Jamie McDonnell is a 5-1 outsider. against the man that they call the monster.
You wouldn't bet on that, though, would you?
I wouldn't be betting on that, no. But absolutely, hats off to Jamie McDonnell. I think he's probably the most underrated British fighter at the moment. He just keeps, taking on these challenges, very, very difficult challenges on away soil. Absolutely, hats off to him, and I think he will give it a good go, and we'll get a kind of for the first time, the British fans will get to see Inoue on their screens live. I think it's the first time, or it might be the second. He was in Superfly, wasn't he? But yeah, the Sky Sports customers are going to get to see the man that they call the monster, and at least it'll be a gauge. We're all assuming that Inoue will win, but at least it'll be a gauge as to how good he is, because a lot of the British fans should know how good Jamie McDonnell is, and he is pretty damn good.
Considering McDonnell was losing to Chris Edwards, as we mentioned, when Edwards passed away recently, it's remarkable that he's fighting Inoue now. But one thing you did mention to me, though, there's not a lot coming up next. I think that somebody said the other day, HBO haven't got another fight scheduled till like August or September or something like that. I mean, it's really getting bare. You've got Sky Sports, haven't you, Smid? Did you see Stevenson-Jack last night?
Yes, I did. I thought the early stage, I watched it this morning, didn't know the result. I thought the early stages were pretty steady, or verging on being boring, to be honest. But then, yeah, really caught fire in the second half of the fight. Really enjoyed the second half of the fight. Obviously, the body work from both of them has probably already been mentioned by everyone. And how Badou-Jack managed to stay on his feet in rounds 10 and 11 was pretty impressive, to be honest. And then it switched again, and then the last 20 seconds of the fight, Stevenson was out on his feet. But it's simple with Stevenson. He's not been fighting anyone for God knows how long. And this is what happens when you come in against someone like Badou-Jack, who is proven. Yes, it is at the lower weight, but he is proven to be genuinely world class. Then Stevenson's been shown up, and if there was two fights last night, really, both which we spoke about, both main events. If both of the guys could have had a bigger punch, Selby would have been knocked out, and Stevenson would have been knocked out. I think that's pretty safe to say. Even if Warrington could hit 20% harder than he can, he probably would have won by knockout. He was landing with a lot of clean shots, particularly the right hands, and similar with Badou-Jack as well. He had Stevenson rocked multiple times. I think he dominated 7, 8, and 9. He probably won the last round as well, certainly the last 30 seconds. But yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing a rematch there. What was the consensus for you guys? Do you think a rematch is likely?
Well, we're expecting there to be a rematch made, but we also thought that Stevenson's on the sort of slide now, and that could be the end of him after a rematch. And Jack, we were wondering why Jack keeps on ending up with these majority decisions, draws, split decisions. Smido, any insight into why the judges don't favour him?
I don't know, because I was... So, one of the listeners, Dale Nichols, has fancied Badou-Jack to win this fight for a while, and I was talking to him today, and I think that he was unlucky last night, because the rounds that Badou-Jack was winning last night, I thought were pretty clear, and certainly more clearer than the ones that Stevenson was winning. But the reward for both, whether it's razor sharp or in one round or clear dominance from one fighter, unless there's no knockdowns, the rewards are the same, 10-9. And I think that, sometimes that's where Jack's come unstuck a little bit, is his lack of power, because, that would help rack up more points. But I don't know, obviously he was on away soil and stuff like that, but he has had, I don't think I've ever known anyone with more draws on his record than him.
And finally, in a word, Smido, Box Nation subscriber, yay or nay?
No, it's going this week. It's going this week. I'm not kidding. I decided today. So It's going. What's coming up, without me looking, what is next on Box Nation, honestly? Tyson Fury again. Other than that, what is next?
Well, I'm wondering if they might get Santa Cruz Mares, which isn't great. Charlo's coming up against Trout and that soon. Ocampo's fighting Spence, but Sky seem to be getting the Spence fight. I don't know, Andy, anything that you can think of?
Not off the top of my head, man. I just wonder if I maybe get the Lemieux fight. But you need to remember, Box Nation sometimes put stuff in their schedule, like late doors and last minute things and that, so...
Getting it on the cheap sort of thing, yeah.
They'll be showing Crawford against Hornwall,
Oh yeah, they are showing that, yeah.
I think what's going in my decision there is that I'm not getting up for fights like what I used to in the middle of the night. I used to do it virtually every week, but I've packed up doing that now and just watching it in the morning. And I can as easily do that on YouTube or link what you guys send me than I can recording it on Box Nation, and for the same quality, and just watch it on my iPad. So it's going.
Okay, Aussie, a few points of interest from next week. Tyrone Nurse is travelling over to Australia on Thursday to fight Jack Brewbreaker. I mean, is this going to be a Commonwealth title fight or something, Nurse? His style, you'd think, is maybe not conducive for getting a win on the road. It's going to be tough for him.
Yeah, I think it might be an eliminator, actually. Interesting that he's actually going up to welterweight as well. Tyrone's campaign predominantly at 140 for his career. Obviously, he suffered the defeat to Jack Catterall, so he's going on the road. I think a Liam Taylor at Terry Flanagan's gym was actually scheduled for this fight, but it fell through. So Nurse has stepped in. I think he's had a relatively decent time in terms of preparation. Yeah, it's going to be... I don't know much about his opponent, to be honest. I've seen enough of Tyrone Nurse to know that if he boxes, it can be a difficult night for anybody. But Tyrone Nurse also likes to get pulled into a fight and stand there and trade, and that's not really what his strengths are. He's better boxing at distance, controlling it behind the jab, and he does have the skills, Nurse. He's a very good boxer. It'd be interesting to see him at 147. He's a tall guy. I think he might be 6'1". So to get down to 140 must be taking its toll on him. So he's got to take that extra 7. He doesn't have to take the extra 7 pound off now, which is a big difference. So it'll be interesting to see. I hope he wins. I always think he comes across really well, Tyrone Nurse. Doesn't really have a bad word to say about anybody. Honest. Been around. It seems like he's been around for years, actually.
Didn't he turn pro at like 19 or something, Aussie?
I was going to say, I think he's had about 45 fights, hasn't
he turned pro really young, yeah.
Yeah, he's tried to do it the right way. Area, English, British, Commonwealth. So a lot of time for him. I like him. I think he can be okay to watch sometimes. He can also have absolute snooze fests. But he's had a couple of good ones as well, the Dave Ryan fight in particular. So yeah, I hope he goes and wins. Don't know much about the Aussie guy, but he's not going to be a mug. Good luck to him.
Hey to Dave Loback, we're not going to get too bogged down on this now because we're nearing the end of the show and we haven't got too much to talk about next week. So tell me about Tyson Fury's comeback on June the 9th against this legendary 39-year-old Sefer Seferi. I always like people with names like that, you know, a lack of ambition. It's like Mohammed Mohammadi, isn't it, back in the day? He's 23-1 with 21 knockouts. He's Albanian. He's the second best cruiserweight in Albania out of all 2 of them. And he calls himself the real deal. So do you think he's going to follow in Evander Holyfield's footsteps here, Dave?
I guess he takes after his parents. They couldn't think of what to name him, so they just gave him their last name without the I. And he couldn't think of a nickname for himself, so he just went with Holyfield's. Very daring guy. He's going in against the Gypsy King. I mean, let's be real. There's, as we were saying before that we went on air, there's not much to say about this fight, is there? I took a look at his record. He can apparently punch. He's got a high percentage of knockouts, 88%. Most of his guys he's knocked out. He fought Char. That's the only recognizable name I have on here. A Char who was loss, win before he'd fought Seferi. And he lost to Char. Some judges had it wide. Another one had it like reasonably competitive. He's probably going to go rounds. Let's hope he goes rounds. Gives Tyson his legs back. Gives him a chance to get the feel of the lights and the cheers and all that. Tyson should school him. Probably shut him out.
What message does this opponent send, Dave? What message? Because we hear about Fury, he's back to his best. They're all saying, obviously, lip service. You know, he hasn't changed in the 2 years, blah, blah, blah. He's looking brilliant in the gym. What does this opponent say? It
says one of 2 things. Either Frank is desperate to get him active and can't find a reasonable opponent and can't get an opponent that like we would respect because either he can't afford it, he doesn't have the drawing power. Tyson Fury doesn't have the drawing power. It's just not worth it for too many guys. So too many men aren't willing to take what Frank's offering. Either that or Fury actually is unsure, and Frank is unsure, and Fury's team is unsure about how he's going to look when he comes back. So they wanted a pretty easy fight. It could be either of those two. Maybe it's a little of both. I'm just glad he's finally getting back in there because he can build on this. Because remember now, Fury's resume was not too good before he beat Vlad for the title. He had a few decent wins. Chisora was probably his best win both times. And he fought that guy who beat David Price. was pretty much a feather fist. What's his name again?
Hammer.
Christian Hammer. Yeah, he fought him right before he fought Vlad, didn't he? I mean, that's not too impressive. He tried to make better fights. Like he tried to fight Hay. He would have whooped Hay's ass, I have no doubt. He tried to fight some other guys. I think he wanted to fight Tony Thompson at one point. Some claim he ducked David Price. I don't think so. I think he wanted that fight. Regardless, he ended up fighting Vlad and beating Vlad. But I don't think that a bad opponent here, which Safari is a bad opponent. I don't think that this means he can't build on it. I mean, this is just a formality. He's getting back in there. It's just like Khan versus Le Greco, Brook versus Rabchenko. It's pointless, but it's getting him in there. It means nothing to his resume, but hopefully we will see bigger things to come. Just let's get it done. Let's get it over with. See how he looks.
Yep, completely agree. George Ross is on Twitter, like a few other people recently have asked us why we're not on Spotify. Well, we have applied twice to Spotify, but they don't want us soiling their airwaves, seemingly, because they haven't accepted. So that's the story on that. That's all I can tell you. Rob, are you on Spotify,
If you're on Spotify, make sure to leave your Spotify player on overnight for about 4 weeks. We're getting money out of it. But yes, continue. Sorry.
We just about got you here, Rob. You were breaking up a little bit, but let me hit you with this question. Jamie McDonnell is travelling over to Japan to take on Naoya Inoue. McDonnell's WBA bantamweight title is on the line. Ken Shiro is headlining against Ganigan Lopez. For whatever you think about McDonnell, we're going to be watching him about 2 o'clock in the afternoon our time. He's got a set of balls, hasn't he?
Yeah, with to go over there, like, yeah, definitely, and against that opponent too, like, rough fight, like, can't see him coming away with the win there, like, probably on a hiding to nothing, but, you know, credit to him for going over there. He's not waiting around and trying to get somebody. He's going after the title and he's going over there, so good luck to him. I know he has the title. I don't care about this fight.
Do you think he has the balls, or is it true what he said when he said, like, I think he said this just like last week or a few weeks ago, he doesn't even know who his opponent is?
Yeah, I think he genuinely does. I think he's just boxing for money and he's just not afraid to take on anybody. I can well believe that.
Okay. So you think he does know who he's fighting and the danger?
He'll know. If he doesn't know now, he'll know after a couple of rounds, and then a couple of rounds after that, he probably won't know again.
I do believe him when he says that he's not really what... He probably have heard of him, but I bet he hasn't watched him or anything like that.
Smido, talking of people boxing on the road, Khalid Jafai is defending his WBA super flyweight title against David Carmona. The best thing about Carmona is he's got 5 draws on the record. I love a good 5 draws. He's not quite getting into Carlos Monzon territory. I think he ended up with about 9 draws. But anyway, this is on the undercard of Jerwin Ankayas, who we saw beating Jeremy Conlon. He's defending against Jonas Sultan. This is all going on in Fresno, California. You think Jafai will get past this Carmona character?
Steve, I've never even heard of him, Carmona. So sorry, I'm the wrong person to ask for that.
No problem. Carmona did actually, Smido, for your information, go the distance with one Naoya Inoue back in 2016. He's quite a neat boxer,
really?
And he can take the punishment, but he also has been knocked out in the past as well by none other than Omar Narvaez, who we saw stinking out the joint against Zolani Tete recently. So a bit of iffy form here and there from Carmona. You never really know which version's going to turn up.
And that's over in California. I'm struggling to see the point of this Jafai project in America, Steve. Like, I didn't even know this fight was happening. That's how much success they've had at building his name. It's
Matchroom Boxing USA in association with Top Rank. What you're saying, basically, Smido, in a nutshell, is you want to see Jafai defending against decent names, maybe at home, and not arsing about on the road? Yeah,
or fight decent names on the road, but you know, maybe this kid is a decent name, but I've never heard of him. So that's a measure from a casual.
Casual and proud. Final word to you, Andy. Anything about Jafai, about Fury, about McDonnell? What's the best thing next week? It's pretty lean pickings, isn't it, all round?
It's a diet next week, mate. I think I'm not really looking forward to. Well, I guess I'll watch Fury, see how he gets on, but I expect he's fighting a cruiserweight for Christ's sake, so he's got to basically win, look good, and fucking stop the guy, and legit stop the guy. Not one of these British stoppages. Jafai Carmona, I expect a distance fight. Probably Jafai winning at like something like 117, 111.
Do you think the fact that he's on the same card as Ankayas means they're going to be pushed together next?
Possibly. I did notice Top Rank and Eddie's co-promoting this card, so you think maybe they're going to look to make a. Well, this is on ESPN3, so I don't know if I maybe try and make a Superfly card, but that's me like Tom Loeffler and HBO has kind of got that sorted out. So I don't know, but you like to think anyway that we're going to go for Yafai and Kahas at some point, but who knows? You know, we've heard the excuses for Yafai's team in the past, so why is this not going to be any different this time?
Good point. Like I say, next week, if you have any questions, I'm going to put them on, have a few discussions. We'll maybe talk a bit of Canelo, a bit more Fury, other points of interest. It's going to be a bit of a lean one next week, but we'll see how we get on. Right, let's finish up now with the value of the weeks, and then we shall get out of here. We're calling the casual, so if you've sent me an account...
Wait. Hold on.
Whoa.
I've got something for you. Jamie McDonald's going to put on a fucking show over there when he goes.
Here we go.
In a way. That's going to be my prediction. I don't think he's going to end up winning, but the kid's going to put on a great account of himself, and he's going to impress a lot of people because he's not going over there to fucking lay down and roll over. He's a road warrior motherfucker, and I think he's going to put on a hell of a show. I got all the confidence in the world in the kid. So whenever that turns out to be a hell of a fight, you heard it here first.
You going to watch it, Gabe, live?
Fucking A.
It'll be about, what, 8 o'clock in the morning your time, maybe, something like that?
I'm not real sure. I'm
be up. He has to sit on his porch and watch out for invaders.
Won't you come this way and see what happens to you?
Jeez.
I'm dead serious. I think Jamie's going to put on a show and he's going to make it a hell of a fight. He's underrated by a lot of people, and I really do think he's gonna go over and he's gonna make a hell of a fight of it, do everyone proud, and I think it's gonna be a little bit closer of a fight than anybody's expecting. Like I said, I don't know that he comes out winning it, because anyways, it seems to me to be a pretty special kind of talent. But Jamie's sound. I think he'll make a good show.
That's you told, Dave. You better keep your pasty white ass on the East Coast. Anyway, let's move on. Value of the weeks before we finish up. First nomination comes from Godachenko for Jamie Moore. Jamie Moore says Martin Murray, Rocky Fielding and Carl Frampton are all going to win world titles before the end of August. Not too convinced there, Jamie, to be honest with you. Maybe one of the three. DJ Boxing Blog has nominated the Sunday Puncher Pod. I'm not one of these people who likes Lomachenko because has fancy footwork and nice training videos. Go win fights, says the Sunday Puncher. And Mr. Boxing Blog says 4 world titles in 3 weights in 12 fights. Value of the week. Okay, fair enough. The Boxing Kingdom has been nominated for their May pound for pound list. It is, and I go down in order from number 20. Wilder, Saunders, Burnett, Estrada, Santa Cruz, Pacquiao, Badu Jack, Kovalev, Gassiev, Linares, Joshua, Rungvisai, Spence, Inoue, Usyk, and then the top 5 is Garcia, Canelo, Crawford, Loma, and Triple G. I think it was Brian King who nominated that one. Nomination for Stefan WWFC, fellow Wolves fan. He was recommended the pod by our friend Simon, and he said, as long as you take that Boxing Asylum bullshit, then I'm in. And this is just minutes after saying he was looking forward to watching a Kugan Cassius Eddie Hearn special on IFL, so an L for him. Stefan has nominated Trap Media for talking about Errol Spence Jr. I think that Mr. Trap Media thought that Danny Garcia would knock out Spence. Martin Hurry has nominated Glenn McCrory. What was he making overtures at Michelle Phelps? He tried to later delete it, but Martin Hurry got the screen grab. You can't escape on Twitter. NFCC Man has nominated Spike O'Sullivan. Quite a few people nominated this actually. On BoxingScene.com, Spike says, the question is, would Triple G be able to handle my power? Yeah, it's the question we're all asking, Spike. Eddie Hearn is thinking of putting out a weekly or bi-weekly podcast to rival us, maybe, with Kugan Cassius. Michael McElway has rightly nominated Eddie for that suggestion. Prince Patel was given an interview with IFL TV. Kane Johnson nominated the whole interview. Patel really did go off on one, to be honest with you. And I have quite amateurishly knocked off all the nominations here, so I shall just talk for a minute while I try and bring them back. And there we go. Right, Matthew Skelton has also nominated Prince Patel for saying that he's going to emulate the great Henry Armstrong. What do you think, Andy? Think Prince Patel will end up emulating Henry Armstrong?
Who said that?
Prince Patel, man.
Oh, he said it. Okay.
Obviously, well, if he's talking about like picking up all these titles and that, then I suppose aye. But that's where the kind of the semblance ends. I didn't watch it. I did see Coogan actually mentioned about it, saying it was like the most challenging interview he's ever done in his puff. By the way,
in fairness to him, right? I was kind of, I could spot what he was doing. Like he's doing the poor man's Conor McGregor / Prince Nazim / like the era of the troll. Like, so he knows he has to make noise and say this shit. I will give him credit for mentioning Henry Armstrong in the video. He mentioned actually a couple of fighters from the past, so he knows his shit. Like, but what I'd say he's doing is he explained like that he was just being inactive with Warren, and what he was doing was just going on the road and trying to make as much money as he can. Like, so I'm not altogether down on him because I can see what he's doing. But the problem is with these guys, as we know, is that once you have to get into a real fight, everybody's going to remember you for all that shit you were talking. You know what I mean? So, yeah, but he's no Henry Armstrong. But in fairness to him, he wasn't comparing himself to Henry Armstrong. He said that he wanted to be active, and he said that Henry Armstrong fought X number of times in 1 year. And what's wrong with trying to emulate that? I don't think he was like, you know what I mean? Anyway, sorry.
No, it's okay. Prince Patel TBE GOAT, says Rob Kelly. You heard it here first. Box Royalty has nominated Hughie Fury. He was up on Instagram and he showed a picture of himself looking all suave and sophisticated. Do I look like I get punched in the face for a living, he said, and he put up a poll. 67% said yes, and no was 33%. Hughie set himself up for this, says Box Royalty, quite right. Andy Patterson of this podcast has named the PBC for naming Adonis Stevenson as Fighter of the Week, even though he hasn't fought since June. We love these Fighter of the Weeks, Andy, don't we?
Yeah, we do, mate. That's why he's getting my nomination.
Oh, good one for Adonis there. John Swan has nominated Jake Wood. He was bigging up his pound for pound podcast or whatever it is he does with Spencer Oliver. John wasn't too happy about that. Marvelous Mendo has, he said, I'm going to nominate Selby's emaciated body for a Bellew of the Week. Now, that's a man who proves the old adage, you don't need muscles to be a boxer, but you probably do need a glass of full-fat milk and a smaller cap to fit over your dehydrated head, says Marvelous Mendo on the Facebook page. He then also nominated what was it, Rick? I think it was Rick Manners, wasn't it, Ozzy, for the blow-up sheep incident? What was this racism gate that was going on? Any more insider knowledge on that, Oz?
No, I don't really know. One thing I would say, I don't think it's racist at all. It's just human beings of today, that the politically correct brigade who just get offended by everything. I wouldn't say it's racist.
Is that for throwing the sheep at Selby, eh?
Yeah, something like that. And part of Warrington's team were holding them. Apparently they were keeping all basically. So, if they were chucking him back, they'd just get thrown on. I didn't read too much into it because it's just something and nothing really.
How is it racist though? How is it racist?
I know I don't get that at all.
There's places in Scotland. There's places in Scotland with fucking sheep farmers. There's places in New Zealand. There's places all over the fucking world with sheep farmers. Is it racist against them? Fucking tossers.
Yeah, it means fuck all to me. They could do a lot worse. That's what I would say.
Can we put in Jason Chutwu for ducking the pod after you sent in 3 emails to him, Steve? Now he's claiming he's got Twitter and that. Oh, hopefully his Twitter account works better than his fucking email account, eh?
I'm trying to send in the message now. Before, whenever Jason's come on, he has... I've sent in the email link and he's just clicked it directly, but at the moment, he can't seem to get on. So his Twitter messaged me. So if you follow me, Jason... I'll DM it to you, and then we'll try and get
this is the Bellew of the Weeks are on now. Yeah, they'll tell him to come on next week. What do you think this is?
There we are. I've sent it to him, so hopefully we'll get him on. Anyway, Holly Lewis was one of many people who said nomination for Frank Warren for calling Josh Warrington Carl, and then immediately Dempsey then called Carl Josh. There's some kind of dementia going on. I don't know what's happening. John Kearns as well. This show is full of Bellew of the Week nominations. He said, McIntosh apologising for Fury's language after we just watched Cartwright walking around with his gin hanging off. The timekeeper as well, and the Adams fight for allowing the opponent to take that pasting as well. Chadders has nominated Frank Warren for calling Josh Warrington Carl. Ollie's boxing handler has nominated Frank Warren for saying that Nicola Adams is like the female Lomachenko. Iron Fisted Champion. Iron Fisted Champion has nominated The Sun for an O'Hara Davis article. Mohammed Mir has nominated Sky, but I believe this is an old one from Strictly Boxing fans for putting up a picture of Douchy Zora on Sky and having Nicola Adams flyweight below it. Chad Hogan has nominated Split D Boxing and Kenny Keith on the Boxing Rant for both having a duckies winning the fight. Old School at Darren Carr says, old Frank Warren for calling Josh Carl straight after the fight and then in the post-fight press conference. Then he said that Josh had been changing napkins instead of nappies. Darren goes on to say, been thinking it for a long time, but Uncle Frank is getting the early signs of dementia unless the bullet is still stuck in there. So thanks for that, Darren. Press Pass Paul was going on about world champions in England and Northern Ireland, so he got nominated from Chad Hogan. AJ's Glutes has nominated Bunsey, claiming it was a very, very good undercard last night because a fight got stopped due to cuts. Also, I'll nominate the BT team for getting names wrong all night, bad timekeeping and microphones that didn't work. It was like the old days on Satanta. Ashley Nid has nominated Warren for calling Manuel Charles world-class fighter to justify the Fury-Sefer fight because Sefer went the distance with him. That's worth a Bellew of the Week nomination. And that's all the ones that I have. I have sent the link to Mr. Jason Chukwu, so hopefully he can get on before the end of the pod. If not, we'll try and get him on next week. I don't know what else to do, Jason. Anybody else got any nominations?
Yeah, I've got one for Adonis last night. He wore trunks into the ring that were designed by Dapper Dan, the Louis Vuitton print trunks. And Dapper Dan was a guy in the 80s who used to make like custom-made Gucci print and Louis Vuitton print stuff for rappers. And that's where Tyson was when he fought Mitch Green on the street. He was going to get a Dapper Dan jacket with the Don't Believe the Hype on it when that fight went down. So there's a bit of trivia for you.
Is that right? Really?
Yeah, true. That's true.
That's class.
No, it doesn't translate the boxing shots because he looked like someone trying to fight his way over Louis Case last night in them shots. As well as that, Floyd for conducting his business through fight hype and commenting on the Gervonta Davis situation, like basically throwing the poor chap under the bus again in the most petty fashion. You got to listen to that interview where he basically confirms that he bought him all the furniture and this, that, and the third, and talks about himself for most of the interview while shitting on his fighter. Like a class act again as usual, Floyd. Like, so those are my two.
I'm going to nominate Ian John Lewis for taking the shot.
Took it well though, Dave.
He didn't stop it. He didn't let it go on. Thought he was going to stop it, but in typical fashion, he let it go on.
It would have been funny if he'd have waved himself off, wouldn't it?
I don't think he should have been in there to begin with. I think he broke the action several times when he didn't need to because Stevenson was holding, but Jack was still working, and that was one of those times.
Sorry, I'm trying to invite Jason for the final time. Anybody else got any nominations? Jump in. Nobody?
No, quiet one for me this week.
Okay, we'll go through each individuals then and see who we're going to come up with. Smido, if you've been listening to them all, I know that you're in a dark place with boxing at the moment. What are you going to go for?
That one who compared Nicola Adams to Lomachenko.
That was Frank.
Yeah, well, Frank deserves it. Whoever said it deserves it. If that's Frank, then so be it.
Yeah, I think I might go for Frank. I was toying with Prince Patel, but I think because of that and also the mishaps in the ring and afterwards and stuff, I think I might have to go for Frank as well, to be honest. He's building a solid resume.
Just Frank
here.
overall, yeah. Frank overall, undercard, microphone issues, calling people by the wrong name, and Nicola Adams Lomachenko. There's a lot of body to his work there over the weekend.
What do you reckon, Dave?
Yeah, I agree. Frank's had a strong week, and multiple offenses tends to add up. You think he beats out Prince Patel. Prince's first loss.
I'll go for Frank as well, mate. That's just insane. Nicola Adams is like Lomachenko. I mean, fucking hell. If anything, if she's like anybody, she's like a man. That's all she is.
You think Lomachenko has trouble keeping women like she does? Wait, what was that line?
Lomachenko's walking on his hands to hotel rooms and all. He's knocking down serious lads at the moment. He's walking on his...
Lomachenko is that good. Women actually wait for him. Fucking Nicola Adams is that good. Her woman fucking walks away for her.
I bet there's 7 women trying to figure out the Matrix as we speak. As he gets to become a bigger star. But anyway, we're after going down a weird side street here.
Yeah, let's get. Sorry to drag us back to boxing, Gabe. But have you got any nominations, Gabe?
No, I do not.
Oh,
I nominate that guy who walked into his house and sat on his porch.
Yeah, we're nominating. Sorry, Gabe, we've gone past nominations. I'm stuck in the past here. Who are you actually voting for?
Just Hearn for being a jackass. His podcast wouldn't fucking do anything. We get more views with a fart.
Yeah, actually, bring him into the podcast game, because a bit of heavy competition. We get, you know what I mean? People that know what the real deal is have to listen to both. We just banish.
You're right, and then we'd have a real competition, and then we would be undisputed after we stomped his ass out.
He'd destroy us, Gabe, wouldn't he? Realistically, for numbers, let's be honest.
Yeah, and why is that? Why is
not
that?
in quality.
Why is that? Because he's got fucking bots running over Twitter and that, retweeting fucking shitty tweets for like all these wee sycophants and stuff. I think we're fucking stupid. I think we don't know how the fucking business works.
We're the people's champions, baby. Let's go, champ.
He bought those motherfuckers on eBay.
What was that line about? That the guy who nominated Frank said the bullet is still in him. Was Frank shot?
Yeah, he got shot years ago.
Shut up, your grasses.
I'm not getting into that now.
It was linked with MTK, that shooting.
Oh, wow.
Does anyone think that MTK should like come at Eddie Hearn kind of the way Suge Knight went at Puff Daddy? You're tiny, you're promoter, all up in the Eiffel videos. Come to MTK.
Right, Rob, who are you going for? Come on.
I would go for Eddie trying to get a podcast against us.
Oh, Eddie's rivaling Frank here, not only in promotional terms, but also in Belly of the Week terms. Come on, Ozzy, you could make this interesting. Eddie, you going for?
I'm not going to make it interesting. I'm actually going to go with Frank. He's had a great weekend. He's got a new world champion, so he's over the moon. And I think it's only quite right that he gets an award because he can't even remember the name of his own world champion.
Boo! Bad vote.
As much as I like to criticise Edward, one thing I will say is that he does get his fighters' names right. So to call Josh Warrington Carl.
Interesting though, isn't it? Interesting Freudian slip, Ozzy. Do you think that the money Carl's on his mind? And I just wonder.
Fuck knows. He does it all the time, Frank. You watch his videos and he calls everybody everything. It amuses me, to be honest. He's on his way down, isn't he? But yeah, in my opinion, to call Josh Warrington seconds after he's just won a world title, Carl, is comedy gold.
Well done, Frank. You've won this week. Yeah, I've sent Jason the link about 5 times on his email, plus the link on Twitter, and he can't seem to get on. So I don't know. We'll have to try and get him on next week or something because we're finishing up now. Thank you to everybody who's been on tonight. We've had Ozzy, we've had Rob, we've had Gabe, we've had Andy, Dave, and Adam Smido Smith. And wasn't there somebody else on? I can't remember if there was or not. What's your Twitter handle, Smido?
Mine is at Smido11.
At Smido11 there. Go and get following him there. Right, thank you for listening, everybody. We'll catch you all again next week. I've been Steve Wellings. Cheerio. Bye.